Edgar's here today.
Edgar's here. I'm in the same shirt as last time I owned,
Oh,
like one Pride shirt.
I'm wearing a Crash Bandicoot shirt.
Same
He's a
thing.
bicon.
Bicon.
Absolutely a bicon, yes.
Yeah. I mean, I've been seeing TikTok's been giving me a lot of Max Goofy Son X Bradley Upper Crust from Goofy
Oh my
Movie
God.
2
Uh-huh.
Yes.
shipping. So
That's really niche, and
yeah,
I am there for that. That's
which
beautiful.
I've never seen the movie, but I know the name from I know Bradley Uppercrust name from a Disney trivia board game we had, where that was one of the answers to the questions.
Was it in a gold container?
Yes.
Yep, I know what you're talking about because I had that too. And I used to make my parents play it with me, and they did not like that. Actually don't think I've seen the second Goofy movie either, but Lyle and I have been talking a lot about watching at least the
It's
first one.
very good. I'm
Yeah.
so shocked. I'm a huge Goofy fan, and how have y'all not seen the second Goofy
Or
maybe?
maybe I have. I mean, maybe we'll watch it tonight or tomorrow night because I feel like maybe I have seen it because 'cause I remember the last time I watched the first one, I was like, well, what about this scene? And then I was like, oh, this scene never happened. So maybe it's from the second one.
Mhm.
There's a lot of
Well,
skateboarding.
yes, it's extreme
Oh,
sports.
wait.
Yeah.
Not I think I've probably seen it, but I also had a video game
Yes.
of him skateboarding. I had I think it was Goofy Movie 2 skateboarding video game. Yeah.
Goofy does it
Anyway.
all.
Well, welcome back to Not My Fantasy, the show where we talk about fantasy films and the lore that inspired them. I'm Cullen.
And I'm Hannah.
And today we have our,
And
our
me.
and me. We
Sorry.
have our good friend Professor Nick Bennett.
Oh my God,
Oh, please.
Professor Nick.
It's just Nick for you. Yes,
Uh,
hi.
Yeah,
yeah.
welcome. Thank you for coming on.
Yes, thank you for having me. I've got the millennial pause there, so
I
little
appreciate that.
little yep. Uh well, yeah, hi. I'm Nick Bennett. I am a professor, screenwriting professor, but we all go way back from
Yeah.
the days of grad school.
Yes.
So almost 10 years?
Mhm.
Is that
No.
true?
No.
Yes, 2016, so
2016.
8 years.
Oh God.
I
Yes.
know. I think I might cry.
Mhm.
That's so
That's
crazy.
so crazy.
Yes.
So we do go way back.
I mean, when I went back to Boston, I remember being like, it feels like this was such a pivotal time, yet it was really actually pretty short, the amount of time I actually lived
Yes.
in Boston.
Yeah.
Yep.
Yeah. Well, happy Pride Month. WeHo Pride is going on right now, but here I am, not getting my wallet stolen, recording this episode. Be safe. I might go to LA Pride. Um, but it's Pride Month. But I have whenever I do something fantasy related, I like to give a little update because yesterday I went to there's a Sleeping Beauty gallery that was
Oh,
opening. They had this Ivan Earl and Sleeping Beauty section at this gallery right near me in Alhambra, and there was this like Ivan Earl section, and there was a section of like art made inspired by the film, and there was a someone who worked on the movie was there.
oh, very
But they
cool.
were being
Cool.
kind of like swarmed, or not swarmed, but like I was like, I don't want to bother them. But I did
Yeah.
get an art print, which I was going to show, but it just blends into my background of the Forbidden City. And I saw Siobhan from Dimension 20, who played
That's
Sleeping
so
Beauty in
cool.
their Never After season.
Oh, wow.
And we
Yeah.
walked right by, and I was like, oh my gosh, is that her? But I didn't want to, it would be one of those things where if I stopped her, it would have been like a blocking of traffic and like
Hmm.
weird. So I'm like, It's good.
Yeah.
I also got this book, Beneath the Moon by Yoshi Yoshitani, and it has like all these fairy tales and mythology in it, and it's with the art that they made for a tarot deck.
Oh,
But each one
love
has its
tarot
own art.
decks.
Yeah, so that's my fantasy update. And then I went with some friends. They were watching UFC fighting at Dave and Buster's,
As you
which
do.
felt it was so gay to the point where I was uncomfortable. I was like, this feels
Fascinating.
like those bars where they play like really intense like porn on the wall, and I feel like, ooh, that can't feel good, and that's how I felt watching UFC.
That was
Uh,
not your fantasy.
that was not my fantasy.
Well, I was
Also,
trying to figure out how this was connected to fantasy. I'm like, well, someone's fantasy.
someone, I
Or
mean, Trump was in the audience that we're watching on screen,
Surreal.
and I was like, and people cheered, and I was like, what? And then I was also like, imagine Donald Trump being someone on this earth who's seen your nipples, because that's what
That's
is
a
happening to these
I'd
fighters.
rather not
true.
Yeah, that's
imagine.
like nightmare.
Yeah.
That's I have a new haunted house for Halloween Horror Nights. You walk in and someone says, "But President Donald Trump has seen your nipples. You may
Yeah,
go."
it's
That's it.
and it's a different kind of horror. Like you're not like it's not a jump scare, it's just something that sits with you for a long
Yeah.
time as you
More
walk through the rest of the park.
psychological. Yeah, it's
Yeah.
psychological horror.
Yes.
Yeah, you walk through the rest of the houses, you don't get jump scared because you're still thinking about that.
Hmm.
Yeah.
Amazing.
So that was my opening of Pride Month. Um, I just want to remind everyone, because last episode was our 50th
Yeah.
episode. So please vote in the Fantasy Choice Awards. They will be linked below at the end of the month. We will be announcing our winners
Giving out
for
some virtual surfboards.
virtual surfboards. These include, nominations for worst dad, favorite bit on the podcast, favorite mythical creature,
Most unsung hero.
most unsung hero. That is a wild card of a category.
Yeah, it is.
Most
There's a clothing item.
There's a clothing item, there's a scene, there's a prop, there's a
Yep.
prop slash ensemble player. Yeah,
Ooh.
It's wild.
it's wild. So please, Fantasy gives you choices. Uh, but if you clicked on this,
You know what we're talking about.
you're here to hear about Mulan,
Yep.
the 1998 cinematic masterpiece.
Is that why they had 98 Degrees sing the theme song at the end?
Gotta be true to your heart.
Oh
98.
my God.
And Stevie Wonder.
Oh yeah, and Stevie Wonder. I
Mhm.
love that song.
Iconic.
Yeah.
Iconic.
Yeah. Nick, have you
Hmm.
seen this movie before?
So Disney's Mulan 1998 is my favorite film.
Good
Just
choice,
putting
good
that
choice,
out
good
there.
choice.
I am a film professor, and of all of the cinema, I choose this.
Hmm.
Very recently, my students were they were showing their letterboxed top fives, and I was
Mm.
like, oh, I'll be brave and I'll show them mine. And totally forgot. I don't know. I didn't look at it before. This was a spur of the moment, and Mulan is like the top, the one. And they're
Yeah.
like,
Hmm.
oh, interesting, interesting choice. But I did. There was one Asian American young woman who looked at that and she was like, nice.
Nice.
I was like, okay,
Yeah,
okay,
I mean,
Thank you.
people
Thank
there
like
we
you.
this
go.
movie. Like,
It's
that's
a
Yeah,
not
great
a
it's a
movie.
wild
really good
take.
film. It's a really
Yeah.
good film.
Yes.
But I think they expected, I don't know,
Something
like,
pretentious. Yeah.
yeah, something very pretentious. And no, it was this right next to
You're so
Scream.
down to earth. So
I
down to earth. Oh
so
my goodness.
relatable. I'm
One
happy.
of us. One
One
of
of
us.
us.
But
Uh,
yes, this is my favorite film. I believe I saw this in theaters, but I can't actually remember the experience. I think I was six. Yes, I think I was six. And I remember very weird things like going into the theater and there being all of the sort of decorations and cardboard cutouts for it, but I don't actually remember the experience. I do know that that Halloween I demanded a Mulan, or sorry, specifically Ping costume, and I did get it, and I did wear it for several Halloweens, and
Nice.
also just for fun and sometimes to school. Um,
Nice.
but yeah, this was very important to me. It still is very important to me. Just in general, favorite film, but with it being Pride, so I'm trans man, and not saying not saying Mulan is trans,
Hmm.
but I'm not saying something along those lines. Let's just say this
Yeah.
movie is gender, and for a young little queer 6-year-old Nick, this was quite the gender. And so watching this, even this morning, when I was like, oh, can't forget to watch Disney's Mulan for the
Yeah.
460th time, I was like, oh yeah, gender. This was so formative and continues to hold that special place in my heart, and I think that um nothing will take that away from me, and um makes it very, very special.
I love that.
Yeah.
I I didn't I may have seen this in theaters, but I was 4, so I was really little. Um, but I have seen it many, many, many times because I do love this film. The jokes still slap. Like
Hmm.
it's still very funny. It still looks really good. The music is beautiful. And it's just like, I mean, this is jumping a little ahead in our episode, but like Mulan is just so easy to root for. Like I just like I want her to
Yeah.
succeed. I love I love this movie. So, yeah.
Because I think whenever you kind of, this has been a theme whenever we talk about Disney, or like, there were three I watched a ton as a kid, and you're always like,
Aladdin, Mulan, and what else did I say?
Little
Little
Mermaid.
Mermaid, right? Yeah.
Yeah.
Mm.
Those were my 3. I really like I didn't really I know I had seen parts of Sleeping Beauty. Same thing with Snow White. I've seen parts of it. I cannot remember the whole thing because those were my 3.
Yeah.
It was Aladdin, Mulan, and Peter Pan for
Oh,
me.
okay.
Yeah. Yeah.
That's, I mean, I love Peter Pan as a kid, but that'll be one to cover when we
And
get
it's
there.
one that definitely, of those three, like watching it now. Anyway, y'all will have a fun episode when that comes around.
Yeah, there's
But
I'm
some,
sure.
we
did
love representation, or do we?
or do we?
Yeah.
Yeah. So Mulan, I think it's either Mulan or Bug's Life was my first movie in theaters. I usually say Mulan because
Oh.
I have more of like a memory of like I remember going into the theater, I remember eating the popcorn and being like, I wish this was a princess movie, which is ironic because it is. Um,
Mm.
and I remember finishing my popcorn in the opening number, being like, it's gone. And that's mainly what I remember. But I remember
That's so
liking it.
funny.
And I remember the toys and I remember it coming out and I've seen it a million times since then.
Mm.
Uh, it holds a very special place because it was the first one I saw. We every once in a while we bring up my famous fan fiction. And Mulan was in that. She was the only girl on the boys soccer team, and
Love that.
she's gonna be cut, but someone had put a prank where they like put a bunch of their clothes and like people's bags in the tree, and she was able to climb to the top of the tree. And so
With
she earned her
discipline and
place.
strength.
So
Yeah.
perfect. That's canon compliant. That's what
Canon
we say
compliant.
in the fan fiction industry.
Industry. And she was friends with like the soccer clique and sort of like the
Oh yeah.
girls who hung out with them. So she would kind of like bop between groups. And she like the guy from Brother Bear was into her, but she wasn't really into him, but they were like just friends.
Mm-hmm.
And she fights with her father's sword during the apocalypse. And there's a couple chapters named for Mulan songs. And Shang is in it. He's the coach. So Mulan
Oh,
and Shang don't date in the story. It said that like in
good
the
choice.
epilogue that years later, he's like just graduated. He's the coach, but they don't date at all. But he has iconic lines to Ans and Hannah where he says, "Not at school, you horny fiends." And God, I did not want to know that. Just use a condom.
Oh my, I
I
love
mean, I can
that
hear
you're
BD
quoting.
Wong saying that.
Yes.
Yeah. Yeah. So, I mean, I don't know how if my Shang was truly canon compliant because there are times when he was a little like delving into like misogyny and homophobia and his like
Mhm.
masculinity, not in a way to like attack those people, but like just
Mhm.
classic masculinity and sports stuff.
Mhm.
But that's what happens with adaptation.
True.
True.
You say that as if it wasn't in your control.
Yeah. Well, see, I
Sometimes it
look
just
back
happens.
and I'm like, why did I
It
make
just it
like
just happened. It just came out that way.
Eric's so mean in that fan fiction. I'm like, why is Eric so mean? Like, what did I have with him? It just kind of happens, writing fan fiction made me understand, like, we know, I mean, I didn't finish it, I'm a Riverdale hoe, but it made me understand shows like that because when you write something, it's just there. And then if you move on, it's being given to its audience live. Like, you can't go back and change it. So you're like, whatever weird thing that just made it through that time, now that's canon.
Right.
Uh,
Absolutely.
yeah, but this film is not fan fiction, or it could be, depending on your
Oh.
definition. Uh, this film was directed by Tony Bancroft and Barry Cook. It was produced by Pam Coates, who I've had the pleasure of working with,
Oh,
Very
and
cool.
nice.
she's an icon. She's so nice and so fun. We're a stan. Actually, me and a colleague are always like, "Ah, we're such a stan. We love her." And I didn't even know until now that she produced this movie. So it's like,
Oh, so cool.
yeah, icons keep
That is
iconing.
awesome.
Yeah, the screenplay is by Rita Hsio, Chris Sanders, Philip Lazebnik, and the writing team of Raymond Singer and Eugenia Bostwick Singer, and a story by Robert D. Sansucci. And it was made in Disney's Florida studio.
Oh.
Oh, interesting.
Yeah. Uh, the songs featured in the film were written by Matthew Wilder with lyricist David Zippel. It was supposed to be Stephen Schwartz, but he left for Prince of Egypt.
Oh,
Wow.
that's
I
interesting.
mean, if there's a
Yeah.
movie to leave this movie for,
But why would you pit two queens against each other though? Like,
true,
Truly.
true, true, true.
that's
Uh,
two baddies.
Who
Disney
did you
what?
say who did you say that also wrote the Matthew Wilder?
Yeah.
Are you talking about the guy who does oh, what's the song? Break My Stride. Ain't nothing gonna break my stride.
I did not look up Matthew Wilder's
Mm.
other work.
Yeah, I think
Um,
that's him.
Disney was pissed when Schwartz did this and threatened to cut his credits from Pocahontas and Hunchback of Notre Dame. But I mean,
Whoa.
he did write those lyrics. You can't just say he
You can't just,
didn't.
yeah, I'm pretty sure that's illegal.
Yeah.
Oh.
This film stars Ming Na Wen from Joy Luck Club, Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D. She is the speaking voice of Mulan, and the singing voice is Leah Salonga, who also did the singing voice for Jasmine. She's
Yep.
a Broadway icon, the original Miss Saigon, just like
Mhm.
everything. Eddie Murphy as Mushu. He only appears in animated movies where he can offer breakfast. Because
Is that in his contract?
I
Love
think
it.
so because donkey, right? In the morning, I'm
Yeah.
making
Oh my
waffles.
Waffles.
God.
Yeah.
That's so wild. The
Uh
animated Murphy verse.
Yeah.
yeah. Uh According to Blaine on Glee, Asian diva BD Wong,
Asian
uh
diva BD Wong, yes.
from Jurassic Park and Father Bride as Captain Li Shang, singing voice provided by Donny Osmond, but BD Wong can sing. So
That's fascinating.
yeah.
Hmm.
Harvey Firestein as Yao, Getty Watanabe as Ling, singing voice provided by Matthew Wilder, uh, Jerry Tondo as Chin Po, James Hong as Chi Fu, Miguel Ferrer as Shan Yu, Suntek O as Fa Zhu, Muan's father, Frida Fo Shen as Fa Li, Muan's mother, June Foray as grandmother Fa. Her singing voice was provided by Marnie Nixon, who you will
Oh.
know as the dubbing voice in movies such as The King and I, West Side Story, and My Fair Lady.
Oh, interesting.
Yeah. Uh, Frank Welker plays Khan Muon's horse. And Pat Morita is the emperor, and George Takei is like the main ancestor.
Hmm.
So quite an amazing cast. The movie cost 90 million and made 304 million.
Can I
Nice.
also mention that this is a very diverse cast as well
Hmm.
for
Yeah,
98. I know that things were starting to change in the 90s with Disney. Um
yeah.
when did Pocahontas come out? Sorry to
Pocahontas was a
Yeah,
95, so like
Pocahontas
a
was
few
95,
years
and that
earlier.
was a big, I know that was a big shift,
Yeah.
Hmm.
but I want to say that like Mulan kind of stepped it up with this.
Oh
Hmm.
yeah.
Yeah,
Mulan
not
has
everybody is of like Chinese descent, but it's still a really, really diverse voice cast.
Hmm.
and it's as a film, it's aged pretty well,
Hmm.
I would say, in its
Yeah.
depiction. And there's actually a great YouTube video that I watched called Everything Culturally Right and Wrong in Mulan 1998, which is great if you want more specific details about Chinese culture.
Mm.
And like different historical eras and fashion, because I was like, let me dip my toe into Chinese history. Then I was like, there is no way I will be able to
So much.
express this in any kind of coherence or fairness to the history of China. So, well, the history we touch on will be very light. This initially there was a movie in production called China Doll about an oppressed Chinese girl who was saved by a British prince. And
Mm.
someone was like, "Oh, what about Mulan?" And they were like, "Yeah, let's do that." So thank God
That
for
person,
that.
give that person a raise. Yeah.
Yeah, seriously.
Because I think that China Doll movie was supposed to be a direct to video.
Mm.
But still, it's like I'm sure that would have no, that's just it's a no for me,
That's
babe.
that's the bad multiverse.
Yeah,
Yeah,
it's a bad
that's the
timeline.
darkest
Bad timeline, that's
timeline.
what I meant. Yeah.
Yeah,
Uh,
imagine going through everything we've been through, but like Mulan wasn't a part of it.
Mm-mm.
Like,
oh God. And we had China Doll instead.
Yeah,
Oh
yeah.
yeah. Oh,
boy.
Be a very different I don't know if I don't know if I would even be here.
damn.
Wow.
Yeah. Uh, Mulan is an official Disney princess, despite
Mm.
not being a princess in any
Yes.
way. So technically, I think they said an act of heroism will get you into the pantheon of princesses. Uh,
Mm.
Okay.
she's as always, we're gonna list what she's the patron princess of.
Hmm.
Fan favorite bit. So she's the patron princess of lesbians, trans, and
Mm.
masked non-binary people. Tomboys, awkward girls, one of the guys' girls, people who don't get the respect they deserve, planners slash schemers, daddy's girls, people who hate makeover scenes, people in martial arts, people who like makeup remover, dramatic haircuts, sorry Rapunzel, the funny friend, working out, people who got lost in the woods at soccer camp, and people who do things for the plot or the drama.
Mm.
Mm.
Those,
Mhm.
I mean, those are all good. Yeah.
Yeah. But despite this iconic status, there's not a single Mulan ride in
Mm.
any Disney park.
Hmm.
She appears in a lot of parades and shows, especially in Hong Kong and Shanghai. And she's in some like ensemble rides. It's a Small World. You can sometimes see she'll be in the China
Or
section,
she's
or
there.
yeah, or there's a ride in Shanghai called Journey to the Crystal Grotto where you just kind of float by scenes. And so there's a reflection scene. And in that same park, there's like a princess restaurant and there's like a Mulan room.
Mm. I
Um,
remember being really disappointed going to Disney and there not being a lot of Mulan stuff.
Hmm.
no,
And like I find that to be pretty common even though like our generation and younger, like I know a lot of kids who really like Mulan as well. Even my
Hmm.
students, most of them like Mulan. It like there's not a lot of merch.
Hmm.
There's not a lot of inclusion of her in like yeah, she's in some of the Disney princess like
yeah,
ensemble things. But I do remember as a kid going to the theme park and being like, "Where's all the Mulan? Where's all the Mulan?"
Hmm.
Really disappointed.
Now that is actually changing because Mulan, like the Disney princesses went through their latest rebrand, right? And Mulan is featured a lot more. I
Mm.
think they're starting to recognize how popular she is. And how beloved she is. So she is appearing in a lot more things. When I was there, she was in the nighttime World of Color like water show. There was this whole
Oh,
Mulan
neat.
section. And I first met her at the China Pavilion in Epcot, but I
Mm.
met her a few times at Disneyland. She's super fun.
Mm.
Uh, Usually, like last time I saw her, she was helping me tease my friend who was like starstruck in a
Oh my
very
gosh.
gay way when she saw her. And so I was kind of helping Mulan like flirt tease with her. And
Oh my God.
Wow.
because she was like, oh, like I bet you'd both look good in armor. I'm like, yeah, but she would look good in armor too, right? And she was like, oh yeah, she would look really good. And my friend was just like melting. Um, but
Excellent.
Mulan's just so fun. She's down to earth. You know, she didn't grow up with a ton of privilege. She worked for what she got. And
Mhm.
that shows, you know, when you meet her.
She's
But
so
so
humble. She saved all of China and she's so humble.
she's so humble. And
And
she
she
just,
was like, "Nah, I'm gonna go home and like hang out on my farm."
yeah.
Yeah,
And you can find her at like the princess area in Disneyland. You know, she just
cool.
hangs out there. Uh, let's get into our lore section. Mulan is an ancient story. I mean, not the oldest we've covered. But the Ballad of Mulan is from the Northern Wei dynasty in the 4th through 6th century AD. But this isn't the oldest version. It was just collected. So, like, you know how China kind of does things that Europe did, but like centuries earlier?
Hmm.
They started doing like the Brothers Grimm thing of collecting stories and stuff way, way, way earlier. So it was from a
Yeah.
Southern collection, and that collection is lost, but the Mulan section is still there.
Hmm.
Um, and Mulan is a culture hero in China. And so she's been told and retold so many times. Wei China, though, is different from the Han Dynasty. And this is where it's like, I'm going to get into this history. And then I was like, I cannot encapsulate this. Um, so the North China Wei Dynasty, it has more connections with nomadic horse warrior tribes and Central Asian culture. So it's not Chinese essentially the way we would think of Chinese now, like Han Chinese. However, all this really is to say is that cultures ebb and flow and they change. And what we think of as this place has always been this one thing isn't always true. And clearly defining who belongs to what and what land belongs, all that stuff, that's really more of a fascist and anthropological thing at the end of the day. Um, that's a very simple, like obviously there's a lot of complexities IRL, but the concept of like who owns a story and where stories come from and the history of cultures, it changes a lot.
Hmm.
Things are in flux. But Mulan is a Chinese national hero still to this day in modern China and kind of seen as the emblem of a perfect daughter. The story was kind of meant to promote filial piety, but also meant to shame cowardly men, selfish leaders. There's a lot of like selfish leaders that are like, or warmongers. Like the initial ballad, people think it was meant to critique the government and all the wars it was sending people to.
Ooh,
Mm.
interesting.
Uh, and so it just depends on the version. And so the Ballad of Mulan is fairly short. So
Yes.
we're gonna read it today. Seek to seek. Again, to seek, Mulan weaves facing the door. She doesn't hear the shuttle's sounds. You only hear the daughter's sighs. They ask daughter who's in her heart. They ask daughter who's on her mind. She says, no one is on daughter's heart. No one is on daughter's mind. Last night, I saw the draft posters. The Khan is calling many troops. The army list is in 12 scrolls, and on every scroll, there's my father's name. Father has no grown up son. Muan has no elder brother. I want to buy a saddle and horse and serve in the army in my father's place. In the East Market, she buys a spirited horse. In the West Market, she buys a saddle. In the South Market, she buys a bridle. In the North Market, she buys a long whip. At dawn, she takes leave of father and mother. In the evening, camps on the Yellow River's bank. She doesn't hear the sound of father and mother calling. She only hears the yellow river's flowing watery cry, to scene. At dawn, she takes leave of the yellow river. In the evening, she arrives at Black Mountain. She doesn't hear the sound of father and mother calling. She only hears Mount Yen's nomad horses cry tsu tsu. She goes 10,000 miles on the business of war. She crosses passes and mountains like flying. Northern gusts carry the rattle of army pots. Chilly light shines on iron armor. Generals die in 100 battles. Stout soldiers return after 10 years. On her return, she sees the Son of Heaven. The Son of Heaven sits in the splendid hall. Okay, the Son of Heaven is like a title for like the emperor
Yeah.
or the Khan.
I had to look that one up. Yeah.
Yeah, like
I was like,
this
did
is
she die? No.
no, yeah. He gives out promotions in 12 ranks and prizes of 100,000 and more. The Khan asks her what she desires. Mulan has no use for a minister's post. I wish to ride a swift mount to take me back to my home. When father and mother hear daughter is coming, they go outside the wall to meet her, leaning on each other. When elder sister hears younger sister is coming, she fixes her rouge facing the door. When little brother hears elder sister is coming, he whets the knife, quick, quick, for pig and sheep. I open the door to my east chamber. I sit on my couch in the west room. I take off my wartime gown and put on my old time clothes. Facing the window, she fixes her cloud-like hair. Hanging up a mirror, she dabs on her yellow flower powder. She goes out the door and sees her comrades. Her comrades are all amazed and perplexed. Traveling together for 12 years, they didn't know Mulan was a girl. The he-hare's feet go hop and skip. The she-hare's eyes are muddled and fuddled. Two hares running side by side, close to the ground. How can they tell if I am he or she? That's how it ends.
Hmm.
So interesting. It's so not what I was expecting.
Hmm.
Yeah,
There's a lot of elements of it. It's very weird what's like elements of it actually made it into the film. Like her look going by the river, like this
Mm.
specific the flowing water cry.
yeah.
Like that, I mean, I know we have talked about the um emotional the Disney emotional water
Yeah.
times, and the fact
Mhm.
that that's actually part of the original story is kind of interesting.
And that
Mhm.
mountain
The
specifically.
mountain, yeah,
Mhm.
And it is very interesting how it ends, where it's like she's like gender's kind of vague. Look at the bunnies when they run by. Can you tell?
yeah, yeah. It's really when I read this a couple days ago in preparation for today, I was like, yeah, I'm not saying it's a trans icon of a story, but I'm not saying that.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I think
Uh
I think you hit it with saying it's like gender.
gen
Capital G gender.
Yes, yes.
Yeah.
yes, it's very interested in kind of exploring that. And it's definitely like it gives you the story and doesn't have a lot of judgment on the actions. It's just
Yeah.
telling
True.
you this is what's happening. Uh but this is the oldest, but it's by no means the only version of Mulan. Mulan was adapted several times. The most famous is the play The Female Mulan, or The Heroine Mulan Goes to War in Her Father's Place by Zhu Wei in 1580. That's 425 years before the release of Chicken Little.
Mm-hmm.
Uh, Everyone performing this play is a man. That's just like, that's when it came out, right?
Right.
It's a
Uh,
thing.
and I think it's interesting. Or I was trying to see if I could read the whole thing because plays are pretty easy reads, but I could not find the last translation I read was from Columbia University, for the ballad. I was trying to find a translation. I was using my library card. I was searching.
Wow.
I couldn't find it. Um, or I could only find the original Chinese and like not like a
You mean
PDF
you
of like
didn't
the
learn
scroll.
Yeah,
it?
you didn't learn Mandarin for this? Come on.
Wow.
Yeah,
Come on.
so fake fan,
Someone
fake
not
host.
dedicated.
uh, so, but I was able to find a summary. And this in this story, it's very similar. Like Mulan she has two little siblings, a brother and a sister, and her parents are advanced in age. Her father, Hua Hua, is a retired captain because it's Hua Mulan, and Hua Hua is her father. and her the last name means flower, and her name means magnolia.
Mhm.
The movie uses Fa Muan, which is a more Cantonese
Yes.
rendering.
Yeah.
And
And
I
so,
do hope we discuss the meaning of her chosen name,
Yes.
Pa Ping, when we get to that point.
Yes.
yeah. Uh, so she's like, I gotta save my dad, right? He's too old. So she gets armor and swords from the family servant. She's like, I gotta unbind my feet because when the first ballad was written, foot binding was not a thing, but it is very much now. And she's like, oh, that's gonna make me unmarriageable. But then she's like, oh wait, we have a potion that once I drink it, my feet will go back to being small again, and they'll be even smaller than before.
Ooh.
Uh,
That's fascinating that this version of the story is so preoccupied with that detail. They're like, okay, we're gonna go let her be a man, but don't worry, when she comes back, it's gonna be solved.
and there she
That's
has
Right, because it's not
crazy.
really it's not that much of a thing in this original translation.
no,
And it's
yeah,
Mhm.
also kind of not a thing. That's definitely not a thing in the 1998.
No.
no,
So so it's just again talking about how like cultures ebb and flow, like the fact that that wasn't a thing they cared so much about back when
yeah.
that first one that you talked about, and now in what 1500 something, it's like it's a big deal.
The first
It's
ballad
that's
doesn't even
interesting.
describe her cross-dressing. She just
Yeah.
goes and does it. And
Yep.
then it's
And
kind of
it's like a
assumed that she had
reveal.
to. Yeah.
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 But
That's fascinating.
so she has to learn how to practice walking
Hmm.
with big feet, which reminds me as my time as a mascot. You know,
Oh my God.
trying to not overlap my. You have to like walk kind of.
We have known each other for 8 years, and I'm just now finding out you were a mascot.
Wait, you've
Yeah, same.
never. Wait, this hasn't.
No,
I feel
this
like
What
is
this.
new
what was your
lore.
mascot? Like,
I was the Golden Grizzly at Oakland. Now I didn't do sporting events. I was in missions at. This is like my fun fact I bring up at work. I don't know how it hasn't.
Aw,
Yeah, so I
mascot.
wow.
had to
Oh.
walk to like keep my feet from overlapping, right? Because you had big feet, so you kind of have to
Yes.
walk, and you have to other if you don't want to look like dead, so you have to kind of walk like
Yeah.
yeah. So almost basically how Mulan walks into the camp in this movie.
Yes. I was going to say she does have to practice walking in the 1998 film.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But in that
So
she's practicing her masculinity, and I guess this would be the same. Her learning how to walk without bound
bound
feet
feet.
is
Hmm.
essentially the same thing, just taking it from that specific like historical
Yeah.
reference.
Yeah. And she's like, I'm going. And the mom is like, no. But they realize the father tried to unalive himself. And so
Oh,
they're like, Mulan, you have to go. But and she's been trained by her father in martial arts. So they're like, okay, she's
interesting.
prepped. But the soldiers rush in, like, we gotta go, we gotta go. So she like quickly rushes off. And the war is against a bandit called Leopard Skin. And
What a cool name.
yeah. And her name she uses is Hua Hu. And great soldier rising through the ranks. Supreme Commander Xin Ping is like, Hoo Hoo, you're great. You're gonna probably get promoted if you capture leopard skin. And she does. Like the war scenes are very like rushed through. I'm assuming because it's on stage. Uh, and but Mulan turns down the promotion and goes home. And the other soldiers are like start gossiping about how strange, like he's always super shy when he pees. Like he goes off to pee by himself.
Real.
Yeah.
Very real. So meanwhile at
Just things
home,
that trans people stress about all the time is like they are going to notice that I'm peeing different.
Hmm.
So anyway, keep going.
Yeah.
yeah.
I'm
Uh,
not saying it's trans, but I'm not saying it's not trans.
is that the episode title?
That's the episode
Yeah.
title.
uh, at home, Mulan's parents are planning to marry her to the son of a prominent scholar who this guy was moved by her devotion, was like, I have to marry her. So she returns home, drinks the potion, gets her small feet back, becomes feminine, prepares for the wedding. Her war buddies rush in and they're like, wow, she's a woman. And then at the wedding, she blushes, and her mother is like, "You fearlessly commanded an army of men for 12 years. How can you suddenly become bashful?"
That's
And
funny.
that's the end.
Hmm.
Wow.
There's slight similarities in that to the 2020 live action Mulan that maybe this will be the only time that it will be named. But particularly with her like training martial arts with her dad and having the siblings. I know that there are siblings in the original, but
Yeah.
more um more of the case in that live action. Similarly, I think with the mom, like there's more of an awareness that she wants to go and take dad's
Yeah.
place in the that live action. Um that's just interesting.
Mm.
Yeah, I've only seen the live action once, and I'm sure we will cover it at some point.
Haven't seen it yet. I heard so many mixed reviews. Plus, that was like pandemic, and so it was
That
Yeah.
like,
was such a wild time.
and there was like that
2020, yeah.
political stuff going on
Hmm.
of like where
Concentration
they
camp.
shot it. Yeah, and
Yeah.
I was like, I don't know. I don't feel good about it. So
Yeah.
I have many thoughts on it if you'd like to bring me back next Pride. Um,
there you go.
or Mulan 2. Well, there is
Electric
actually Mulan
There
2.
is
Yeah,
Mulan too.
exactly. But
Yeah.
no,
Still not a
Mulan
twist in time.
2020. No.
Yeah.
Yeah, Mulan 2 is still not a twist in time is the name. I don't think Mulan 2 even has a subtitle. I think it's just
I don't know.
Mulan 2.
I think
Yeah.
so.
It's
Uh
Mulan 2 it's Mulan 2 compulsive heterosexuality. If you've seen it,
Uh,
if you know, you know.
yeah, I know the plot, but I actually have not seen that
I
one.
haven't seen it. Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, there you
Not real
go.
Mulan fans. I've seen them all.
You see them. So let's talk about there's some lore. I've moved to the middle of our summary. So when we talk about the movie, we'll step back and we'll talk about some cultural context behind a couple elements. But that's the Mulan story. And as usual, especially, I think especially with Sleeping Beauty and any Disney movie, it's like the Disney version becomes a very prominent version that
Yeah.
then cements itself in cultural memory, and that's for Mulan. That was kind of controversial, right? Because the people in China, especially the Chinese government, felt like, oh, now this like Western company. I mean, even just looking at my resources in the library, a lot of it is Disney's Mulan, right? Like it's taken this story and now it kind of owns it almost like an IP. But then at the
Yeah.
same time, it also now more people know this story. It is a double-edged sword. And that's all I can say.
Yeah.
I don't know if I have a thesis about that. It just
Right. I've thought about this a lot, like because I'm not of Chinese descent or Asian descent, but like I've done a lot of research on this, and I remember one of our grad school friends, Yana, who is
Mhm.
Chinese from China, and was studying with us internationally. I spoke with her so much in depth about Mulan, and the live action was actually in production while we were,
Yeah.
Oh yeah.
and she had some really fascinating takes, but a lot of them were one like specific was that she, because being from China, like the cultural like hegemony of pretty much everyone is Chinese, and so the need for representation that many folks feel really strongly about in the US, like it didn't have that kind of impact on her because she sees folks who look like her in films all the time, right?
Right.
Yeah.
Um, but she did, one of the things she commented on was something that I read a little bit more in preparation for today. The like Chinese um in China were not really fans of the portrayal of her as a character, in that she didn't have the the same devotion to they didn't feel that she had the same devotion to family and that she was very westernized, Americanized.
Mhm.
But Chinese American and Asian American friends that I've had have said that like they can see that like um what am I trying to say? Criticism, but that's kind of part of this thing with adaptation. And like what I think Cullen is mentioning is right, when an American studio, right, is adapting this, they're going to change some of those things. um and I think like understanding the audience, like who is it made for, what does it kind of do in general. I was reading a lot about specifically Asian American girls, and I know very random, like Eugene Lee Yang, not an Asian American girl, but a queer icon, Asian
Mhm.
American icon, um, is a humongous fan of Mulan and also like a millennial who
Mhm.
grew up with basically this being one of the only uh Asian representations in like kids film at for
Mhm.
our generation. And I don't know where I was going with that, but basically, like seeing this from like the representation standpoint, but also like the cultural, um, like faithfulness. I think it's important that we view it as like Holland was saying, like this is the Disney-fied version.
Yeah.
Um, and for me personally, again, this is not my culture, so maybe it's not my place to say this, but like the difference between like this versus like Pocahontas. Um,
Ooh.
mentioning that again, right? Whereas
Yeah.
it like whether Mulan, like Hua Mulan was a real person, we know that Pocahontas was a real person.
Mhm.
And that story ended very, very differently and just went very differently culturally.
Mhm.
It seems like the original like Ballad of Mulan was not that different. Sure, like some nuances of her character, maybe she was more devoted to family, I guess, and
Mhm.
less I guess outspoken was one of the critiques, but also maybe that's a historical difference as opposed to a major cultural like disservice and like disrespect that it's doing, perhaps.
Yeah. Also, kind of on that, like talking about like this is she's Americanized because it's mostly for an American audience.
Yeah.
And then it's like this is also the 90s, and so like girl power was a thing. So she's also a product of girl power America. So
Mhm.
so she definitely is Americanized, but she's Americanized also in like that very specific era of
Yeah.
our culture. So,
And recognizing how important that era was for our culture, right? Like
mhm,
that is sure, I think we look some, I don't know, maybe some people look back on that era as being like, oh, kind of cringe, like
mhm.
everything was girl power. But at the same time, we kind of needed girl power.
Yeah.
And there's a reason why these characters, Mulan, Scully, Buffy, Xena, right?
Mhm.
Like these are really crucial, important characters. And Mulan, 1998, sure, she's a strong female character, but I don't know if y'all notice. I noticed this in this viewing, have never noticed this in the like 480 other viewings. She never uses her sword.
I did.
Interesting.
So,
She does the majority of her like badassery. Yes, she does use some martial arts.
yeah,
She
but
uses the swoop kick that she learned from Shang in
uh-huh.
the training montage,
Yeah.
but she does not actually use violence and physical aggression that often. She uses her sword
Cleverness.
Yep.
and her
Yeah.
compassion.
And
Yeah.
I mean, this kind of gets into the first major sequence of the film, but you get her playing that game with those two guys and she
Yeah.
makes a move. That's our
Yes.
first signal of like she's
She's smart.
clever.
That is
And
a really important sequence.
Oh
yes,
yes. And
like yeah, this
I
movie's so
think
good.
and I think yes, this was made for an American, primarily American Western audience. They wanted it to do well in China and it didn't really.
I'm
And
gonna be honest though, that
They
is
wanted that for
kind
the
of
money.
crazy. Yes.
yeah.
They like,
And and I also think that's like really very America centric. Like we wanted to do well in China. Like we want to prove to China that like this is an
look, we took your
efficable.
thing and we made it good. Do you
Yeah,
like
it's like
Yeah.
it?
it's an efficable version of your culture. It's like
Hmm.
that is so America centric. So like it
Yeah.
just kind of makes me laugh.
Yeah.
It's like, what did
Which
you actually think was gonna happen? Come on.
yeah, and the promotional campaign wasn't as huge after kind of like Hercules did not do as well as they thought, and then the Greek response was not what they thought, and
Oh,
but
Yeah,
I think it's also like when we talk about adaptation and Americanizing and modernizing, like again, literally every Disney movie we've touched on, and when we read like those stories, it's like Disney is adapting the character to like what a modern audience or an audience at the time wants.
yeah,
So like like Belle, like when we were reading Beauty and the Beast, like that when I like synopsized the long original version, and like Belle
yeah,
is so annoying. And
yeah.
then in the movie it's like, oh, she's independent and she loves her family and she's brave and like things that we are like, yes. Or even the Little Mermaid, like it's so like sorrowful
oh
and
my
and
God.
traumatic in the story, and it's beautiful in its own way, but then in like a movie, it's like she's spunky and she's independent and she's an
Yeah.
80s girl, she's an 80s teen. you
So
know
Yeah.
true.
Frozen, it goes from like this little
Yes.
girl who's like praying through the snow to like someone who's quirky,
And it's again like specifically what like the values of girlhood and womanhood in America are
are
not going
at
to be the
that
same
time.
at that time, are not going to be the same in China,
Yeah.
in Greece, anywhere in
Yeah.
Africa, a lot of places in like Central and Eastern Europe. Like
Gonna be
it's
different. I
yeah.
mean,
So like
even
yeah,
like when you look at like even Sleeping Beauty, it becomes like a 50s American teenager who's like kind of
yeah,
flirty, and
So real.
and like Cinderella goes from someone who's
Hey,
very like pious to someone who like believes in optimism, which is like classic 50s America, like it's
the more you're talking about this, it's making me realize, like, again, and this is like, Hannah, you're talking about this is so girl power 90s. Really, our stories, our films, like, are products of the time that they're made, and it's of
yeah.
yes,
what people needed at that time. And so for the audience, like, if this is primarily for, we could say it's right, it's marketed as a Disney princess film, so we know that it is marketed for young girls,
Mhm.
um, that this is what is needed at the time.
Yeah.
And I think that's so real. I think
yeah.
that really makes a lot of sense. And I honestly didn't even think about that with like Sleeping Beauty. I'm gonna have to go back and watch these and put those goggles on.
And you
But
can listen to our episodes.
oh, I
Yeah.
will. No, I will.
Yeah.
I so will. You've won me on that. I absolutely.
Yes.
Yes.
Um, but even like thinking about the like I'm looking at the original Mulan right now. The big differences are like, okay, she comes home in the original and she puts on her makeup and her pretty girl clothes and like and goes back to what, doing her hair. How
Yeah.
is that that's not that different from the
Yeah.
1998 film, except that she comes back and she's kind of like non-binary now. Like she's like
Yeah.
not doing the makeup. I have the fact that she's in the third act, she's in trans flag colors. I mean, okay,
Mm.
pink and
Mm.
blue are
Yeah.
classic
Wow.
boy
I
girl
didn't
colors,
even think
but
about
also the
that.
white. I will
Mhm.
say, I know it's not intentional. Okay, I know I'm
Yeah.
projecting, but the cultural reading in the year of our Mushu 2024, um, she's wearing
Yeah.
trans colors in the end.
Yeah.
Yeah.
She wears greens and she's got like some purple in the beginning. In the middle, she's got her browns and greens and tans. In the end, trans flag.
Yeah,
Yeah.
that's interesting.
Just
And
saying.
yeah, like going back to like the two like original stories we talked about is that she returns home and so like after she's done doing her war duty, she returns home. That's what she does. Like she's
Mhm.
still in a way, especially to like an American audience, she returns to quote unquote traditional a
Yeah.
traditional role because she's like she's not continuing in the war or
Mhm.
in the
Yeah.
army. So
Well,
it's
it's like
like
society couldn't tolerate it that way. I mean, Joan of Arc died, right? And my thing I always get is that they got her on that she was wearing men's clothing. That was the only thing they could really legally get her on.
right.
And the Mulan, like it's like everything goes back to normal. So it's like a Shakespeare
Oh
Twelfth Night
yeah.
kind of thing. Like
Mhm.
there's gender transgression, but it's all resolved.
Yep.
But the interesting thing with Mulan going home is, I mean, I think Joseph Campbell, who wrote The Hero's Journey, is a hack, because he just made that up. But a big thing that is like sort of true-ish is that typically heroes go home at the end of their story. This is such a generalization, right? And women
Is the
heroines
stuff that I teach every day on keep going. This is
and
music news.
and heroines tend to not go home. Like they enter a new world. Little Mermaid is an example, even Snow White, right? Like she never goes back to that castle.
Mhm.
And that's even in the old texts, right? But Mulan going back home is kind of emblematic of a hero's journey.
Mm.
So
Ooh,
interesting
Cullen,
thing with gender.
good.
Yeah. Thank
And I
you.
guess another
A
difference,
plus.
another difference I'm noticing with the plot is that I think is a very stark difference is she's not found out in the war. It's
Yeah.
it's at way after.
And it's
Um,
her choice
and
essentially.
it's her choice.
She
And I
does
think
a
that's
reveal. Yeah.
very, yeah, she has her gender reveal.
Face
Um,
reveal, gender
Her
reveal.
gender
She did a
reveal.
gender
no, I
reveal.
mean,
No water was poisoned in
and that is
California.
very interesting. I mean, I understand. I think it's very important that, okay, plot wise and like conflict wise, that she's found out in the war
Yeah.
in most of the adaptations since. But it is kind of interesting that, and of course, like they spend 12 years with her,
That's
12
a
years with her,
long
and they
time.
don't know. Like, holy cow.
Yeah. They're just like, he pisses weird.
Yeah, he
Uh,
pisses weird, but not gonna let that,
Yeah,
ruin
he's a
but
his.
great
he's
warrior.
great. Yeah.
Yeah, he's great on the field,
If
Yeah.
you can capture leopard skin, you can be weird.
Yeah, he's
Yeah.
great at killing
That's
it.
I
a
bet you
bro in my
maybe they
book.
won't admit it, but they all started pissing that way. They're like, you know what? Maybe it's
Yeah.
working for him.
I
Yeah.
know, I know. It's like what that like motocross movie where like she paints her nails, and that's how they're like, oh, we're gonna start painting our nails, and then
Yep.
we're gonna get good.
What a great
Yeah.
reference. My God.
So
Uh,
Disney trans stories. So
yeah.
so the
Uh,
Great Wall, that's what we open with. The Great Wall. It's being attacked by there's a swooping hawk, there's men climbing up, but they're able to light the Gondor warning beacons
mhm.
in time. Because he's like, now all of China knows you're here. And Shan Yu, our villain,
It's like,
is like,
good.
good. I wanted that.
perfect.
So the antagonists in this movie are the Huns. The Huns were a nomadic people who lived in Central Asia, the Caucasus, and Eastern Europe between the 4th and 6th centuries AD. So similar to when the story Mulan was collected. They invaded Europe famously, and so they're kind of famous for killing a lot of people in that until the Pope was like, please no, and Attila was like, all right, and turned around. And then, so the Huns are associated with violence in European traditions, and they're antagonists to a lot of like saints and Germanic heroes in different ballads. The Hungarians have claimed various connections, uh, but that's not really verified, and most likely a no. They may be connected to some Mongolian or Chinese ethnic groups. That's still, again, that's not my area, and there's a lot of complicated stuff with that. But there's not like a famous Hun invasion of China. But I think it's a very,
Just thought it. Oh, I'm sorry, Colin.
it's just very, I think it fits for, again, a Western audience because in our like cultural memory, they are associated as invaders. And there isn't like a lot of it's not like, oh, the Japanese or like another major world culture is
Yeah.
being depicted as the villains. So it's a very American choice.
And they mention, I know Mushu mentions Mongolian barbecue at one
Yes.
Yeah.
point. So it's kind of assumed. I always thought that it was sort of like a crossover, like a Genghis and Attila
Tilla.
sort of
Yeah.
crossover, and the specifically the like Mongolian reference, that
Yeah.
sort of meshing of the cultures. I could see how that would be, I don't want to say well, actually maybe offensive, but I could see how that would be viewed like culturally in China and maybe like ethnic Mongolia,
Yeah.
as of like, that's incorrect. But at the same time, uh, they're also, I mean, they're also being depicted, they're the villains. So
Yeah.
whatever feelings, those are completely valid now that I'm saying this out loud.
Yeah.
Um, but
And the
yeah.
story of Mulan may or may not have also come, or at least had association with Mongolian ethnic groups.
Mhm.
So, and she might even be more related to the Huns. Again, we're going to the way back. Uh, so many years before Chicken Little, and the clarity he brought. So yeah, it is like someone was going to be the villains and they picked the Huns. Yeah, so the emperor, why not just leopard skin at that point? He's a bandit. Uh, so they're like the Huns, Shan Yu has invaded. We need to rally the troops to protect the emperor, and the emperor's like, no, we got to protect my
Protect the
people.
people. Man of the
Uh,
people.
so this is
Mm,
our we like the emperor kind of
yes.
like
Yeah.
moment, and so he's like, but we got to conscript everybody. But then now it's time to meet our protagonist. Mulan's getting ready. She has a big day. She's being the matchmaker. She has her little brother, her dog, do
Who
her
Yes.
shows up
chores.
very briefly in the beginning and at the end and is
Yep.
nowhere in sight during the big like transition, leaving,
Right.
running away scene. We were noticing that this time, my wife and I were
Yeah.
noticing,
Yeah.
watching this time. I was like, oh yeah, the dog. Where's the dog? Anyway,
Sleeping.
Yeah.
sleeping, I guess.
Yeah.
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 That's in
Uh,
character for him.
uh, she's getting ready. The dad doing her chores super fast. The dad is praying for guidance. Because he's like, yikes, Mulan's so messy. Like I
Yeah.
love her, but ooh, but she takes good care of her dad. She makes sure he's drinking his tea as the doctor prescribed. Very Sharon Clueless. Where it's just like she looks after everybody. Uh, but she's gotta go. It's time for her makeover scene.
Hmm.
uh she's got to get ready, and instead of Cyndi Lauper's Girls Just Want to Have Fun, that would be in the jukebox musical version.
Oh no. Don't say that. James Corden is listening.
They're singing Honor to Us All,
Hmm.
and we're meeting mom and grandma. They're saying, boys would go to war for you, if you look hot enough.
The tiny
uh
waist.
yeah.
uh
Uh,
Calm,
yeah.
obedient, who work fast paced, with good
Mhm.
breeding and a tiny waist. Yeah.
Waist. Yeah. Good
Yeah.
breeding. Wow.
Wow.
Yes. And
Yikes.
that's actually mentioned a couple times. The
Uh-huh.
matchmaker
Yep.
reminds us of the breeding.
Yes. So I mean,
Yeah.
when someone says good breeding, there's
Mhm.
like when she talked about birthing, not good for bearing sons, there's that breeding. But then when they say
Yes.
good breeding, it means like well-to-do parents.
Oh, true, for
Yes.
real.
Yeah.
Yeah, yeah, yeah,
Yeah.
yeah, yeah.
I think people sometimes
Get
like
it
it's like
mixed up.
they're
Oh yeah,
connected.
because
They're
I'm
for
not
sure.
of good breeding, and so yeah, no, that is totally lost on me.
Yeah, I'm peasant ancestors.
Hmm,
I
Yeah.
think that connects whenever I'm trying to like lose weight because my body's like, when are the
hmm.
British gonna starve you next?
Yeah.
Like you gotta be
Exactly.
ready for
Like
that.
you need to hold it in.
Hmm.
Exactly. Yeah.
Yeah. Uh,
Now, does she now the very important moment that we mentioned earlier of her stepping in with the checkers and
Hmm.
also saving the doll from the
Hmm.
yeah.
bees? Now, does that, I think that happens before she gets to the it's like on her way
Well,
Yeah.
so
to the matchmaker.
she hops between locations. It's like a
Hmm.
full like
She's like going through like
Sims town of
the
Yes,
like
yes.
different,
downtown.
yeah.
Yeah.
So she fixes the checkers. She's in like she's been washed, but she hasn't been
Yeah, yeah,
uh
yeah.
Makeuped.
You're
yeah.
right.
And
Yeah.
You're
then
right.
she's makeuped when she saves the boys are teasing the girl and
Mhm.
she takes the and they take her doll and she takes the doll and gives it back. And I'm like, I just literally was like, God, I love her. Like I was
Her
like,
save the doll moment.
save the doll. Just like what an icon. Because she doesn't make a big deal out of it. She's just like, I'm
Yep.
not dealing with that bullshit. Like, no.
Yeah.
And
She
well,
believes in fairness, right? And like that's some girl power empowerment right
yeah,
there.
Hmm.
And it's so interesting that you said that like the other option was going to be China doll because the like symbolism of the doll in Mulan,
yeah,
not
Hmm.
just the cloth doll, but like dolls, like women
yeah,
dolls, and like
Yeah.
as a symbol is really poignant here. And
Hmm.
yeah, that
yeah.
doll.
And I think because we're getting the values that her culture supposedly wants her to maintain, but we're seeing other values that she has that to our modern eyes, we would be like, oh yeah, she's clever, she's kind, she believes in fairness. Like we're seeing these other things as she's about to, like while they're singing, like you're gonna bring honor to us by doing these things,
By
not those
bearing
things.
sons. It's like
And
our
it's
boys
Yeah.
by bearing arms, our girls by
Yep.
bearing sons.
And
Yep.
it's I feel like it's really important. I was noticing this on my watch this morning that the values that she embodies, I'm gonna kind of encapsulate this by saying like she's a very gender fluid or like non-binary um character type in that she embodies like her kind of two strengths that we see right here is her cleverness and intelligence, which is being framed as a masculine trait with
Hmm.
Because
the
it's two
checker.
men playing the
Mhm.
Yeah,
game.
Yes, and she finds like the move that the other guy couldn't find. It's a very masculine thing. Her mom drags her away,
Hmm.
and then her saving the doll is like compassion, which is,
Hmm.
and so she's being presented with like this masculine trait, this feminine trait, but they're not the things that her culture is telling her are even the correct things to do with her gender, right? Like
Hmm.
yeah,
she should be fighting. If you're a man, you should be fighting. If you're a woman, you should be this pretty doll, right? And so she's got this main character. She's different, right?
Hmm.
That's
She's not
that's
like other
and that
girls.
she's not like other girls. No. Um, yeah, that's such a key little
Hmm.
moment.
And we're 6 minutes into the
yeah.
film and
We
we've
get
learned
so,
so much. Like
Mhm.
like
but
chef's
I
kiss.
I do think, Disney princess movies are really good at walking that line of like she's not like other girls, but there isn't a lot of girl bashing
Mhm.
either.
Yes.
Like it's not really it's just like she doesn't fit in, but it's not like, oh, and all the other girls are like dummies. Because I think like Camila Cabello Cinderella, we talked about how like the other girls were kind of put down in a way that even other Cinderella adaptations, which is probably our most female competitive story,
Mm.
like it
That's
usually
so
doesn't
real. That's
focus
so
on
real.
that.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, I
Uh
will say one of the biggest criticisms of 1988 Mulan is the lack of other female
yeah.
characters.
Yeah.
Which is
And so
classic
we
90s
do
Disney.
see it is, but even
Yeah.
like speaking roles and um I mean there's one moment in the matchmaker scene. I guess we're not there yet. But I've always been stressed about like oh, Mulan doesn't pass the Bechdel test, right? Like,
Right.
Yeah.
but there's a moment in the matchmaker scene where a couple of like a handful of lines, but then I'm like, no, I'm really reaching. It
Yeah.
doesn't
Yeah.
there the whole setup of it is matchmaking to find a husband. So I
Yeah.
can't give it a pass on that. I'll allow
Yeah.
my favorite film to not be perfect.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Uh so it's also I think we got to move on to this opening, but I think it's also interesting
Mhm.
how Disney is very comfortable when it comes to critiquing gender roles in non-European cultures. And I
Yep.
think the
Oh,
first time we got that expressly European was Brave, which is certainly a Pixar.
Hmm.
move, but like it's like the gender roles, like there's
Mhm.
a hint towards critiquing that in Beauty and the Beast, right? Because she reads, and that's not what she's supposed to be doing.
Hmm.
Only men
But
read.
yeah, I mean but they
That's a
don't
real,
fully
yeah.
get into there's like the hint that she should be focused on
Finding a
breeding and
husband.
finding a husband. But Mulan is like, I mean, because that's more the point of the story, to be fair, but Mulan is very much like, no, this is our strict cultural gender values.
The
Hmm.
movie is gender.
The movie
Yep.
is a
Capital
gender.
G gender.
Mhm.
Uh, we instead of God is a woman, Mulan is a gender. So she gets the matchmaker, and the matchmaker. She also has her grandma's good luck cricket that
Hmm.
the grandma's like, oh, it's for good luck, and just walks across the street. She's fine. Everyone else is crashed.
Yep.
Uh, and so she takes the cricket in with her, and the cricket is not giving her good luck. It's messing her
No.
up and doing weird things and crawling on the woman and getting in the
Jumps in the
tea.
tea. Yes.
Hmm.
So it's a mess. I mean, the woman's on fire. She's getting tea thrown at
She
her.
got, so Mulan had painted the notes on her
Mhm.
wrist, and the matchmaker grabs it and then gives herself a mustache because she had the
Which
ink on there.
is so this moment, I was like, every single sequence in this film is gender because
Yes.
this is not explicitly like being gender, but the fact that she makes this
Mhm.
very conventionally unattractive matchmaker lady
Yes.
who has kind of masculine
Mhm.
features then gives herself this goatee
Yep.
and is like the funny part of it is that she had it's like it's not just that she has ink on her face, it's that she made herself look like a man,
Hmm.
right?
Yeah.
It's so gender. It's so gender.
Yeah.
I mean, even like the fact that she like falls on her butt, like there's so much emphasis. The cricket goes in her
Yeah.
cleavage. Like
Yeah.
there's so much emphasis on gender in this film that like you
It's
can't watch
it's
this without like getting some kind of I mean, maybe you can. Maybe I should speak for myself.
Yeah, I don't think about
Mulan
gender at
made
all
me
when I watch
trans, no.
this. Yeah.
But I watch this and I'm like, oh my God, everything is drawing our attention to masculine, feminine,
yeah.
and like our awareness of gender every step of this film.
Yeah, it's almost like slapsticky comedy
Mhm.
at this moment. And the other kind of slapsticky comedy that happens is with the actual men.
Mhm.
And this is a
Yeah.
masculine coded woman who's not necessarily living up to some of the values
Mhm.
of the culture that we've been introduced to. So yeah, it's gender.
Yeah. Wow, you guys are so smart. Because I was gonna be like, she's giving me Abby Lee Miller vibes.
I did think that. Yeah.
Yeah.
Oh,
She's putting Mulan at the bottom of the pyramid.
yeah,
Well,
probably.
she's like, you're a disgrace and you'll never bring your family honor, which is a big theme, like your family honor. To be fair, I like that her mom and grandma don't shit on her in this moment. They're just kind
True.
of like, oh, that was rough.
Mhm.
Uh,
Yeah.
and so she runs off.
Because no one's gonna beat her up as badly as she's gonna beat up herself.
Yeah.
So, she's about to have like a
She got
super
like
sad
kicked
song.
out. And
Yeah.
also, like, did that kind of ruin the day for the rest of those young ladies? Um, did they like
It's like
miss
sitting in the
their
dentist's office and you hear kids screaming.
yeah, and
Like
you're like,
Yeah.
they're just
"What
like, oh
next?"
God, I'm next.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And so this is when she sings the iconic song
Yep.
Reflection.
One of the iconic songs,
One of the
yes.
iconic songs. My hot take is I think this is the best song in the movie. And
Oh, for
Yep.
sure. I
yeah.
sang this, so little moment. I sang this at my senior actually no, sorry, not my senior. I don't know. I was a high school age, but not senior. Recital, voice recital, and made some people cry, and it was very, very trans of me.
Yeah,
Just
that
putting that
is.
out there.
There you
Yeah.
go.
You
The
said
Glee
it, not
transpire
Looking
me.
back
moment of
on
your
this,
life.
my mom was like, "Oh my God, I should have known you sang the transgender song."
The song. I mean, it is like it is a especially
One
trans, but
of one of the transgender songs in this film.
it is one of the it's just an iconic kind of trans
It's
queer
also just a
song.
beautiful song,
Yeah,
and
and
Yeah.
it's
I guess I don't have to make everything trans. Like it is also just a really powerful, like, I'm not living up to the expectations. People aren't treating me the way that I, deserve to be treated or feel inside.
yeah, it expresses a dysphoria with her body too. Like this,
Yes.
when will my reflection show who I am inside? Like that there's a disconnect between her body and her spirit. And it's just they had a longer version initially, and she was gonna be like riding on her horse past like Buddhist temples and all this, and they cut it for time and budget, but any version of this song is so good.
The radio version is even really good.
Yeah, Christina
Mhm.
Aguilera, this put her on
Mhm.
the map.
Yes.
Uh,
Yes.
and so the her father comforts her, and he says some flowers bloom later, but the flower that blooms in adversity is the rarest of all.
Mhm.
Uh, and so he loves her no matter what. I think again, we need to in order for this movie to work, we have to really like her dad.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And he definitely is a contender for best dad on this podcast that we've
Mhm.
met. Um,
He does get a little snippy in the dinner scene, but Mulan also was like she was acting a little bit of a teenager.
Yeah.
yeah, he's
You
still
know,
flawless, but
yeah,
like,
yeah. And at that point, I think he's kind of like he's like, you gotta drop it. Oh wait,
yeah.
I'm jumping ahead. I'm jumping
You are
ahead.
jumping ahead, but yeah, I
Oh,
just
my
want to.
bad, my
Yeah, we
bad.
had there's a Fantasy Choice Award for Worst Dad, and there's like 16 nominees or whatever
Oh,
because
perfect.
dads are
He's nowhere
so
on this
bad.
list.
Yeah, dads.
Oh.
Yeah. So there's an announcement of war that comes, and
Yes.
that little I always forget his name, but the little gay assistant guy,
Yeah.
he is there, and he's like, everyone has to
Ooh.
Chifu, everyone has to be conscripted. Here's the names.
One
Uh,
man from each
from
family.
each family, and he's like, and her dad puts aside his cane and he struggles up. And I mean, also we forgot to talk about the iconic when she's singing and her reflection is showing in the
Hmm.
tablets, and she does the makeup
Yes.
wipe where it perfectly wipes off and she has two
So like,
sides.
and her
Yeah,
dress is fine. Like no
Yep.
ink on
What
that.
is
No.
that makeup remover? Come on.
Yeah,
Don't
yeah.
yeah,
gatekeep that,
Patron
Mulan.
of makeup removers. Yes,
yeah.
yes. You're right.
uh but her dad's like, yes, I take it, and she's watching from the ceiling, or the roof, and she jumps down and runs, and she's like, no, you can't, like, please, he's already served, he's fought the emperor for the
And
emperor before.
he's injured. Like
Yeah,
he has a limp. He has a war wound, right?
Mhm.
and so she's like, please, and he's like, control your daughter, she's speaking out of place, and he's like, you dishonor me to her, and it's like, that's like,
That's
ooh,
literally
Hard
this movie's
blow,
version of
hard
"You've
blow.
disappointed me."
Hmm.
yeah.
You can
I'm
be as
not
mad at me as
mad.
you want,
Yes.
but if you get disappointed in me, I'm crushed.
Hmm.
Mm.
Hmm. But do you also feel like he's kind of like being performative because he's in
Yes.
front of a ton,
Yeah.
he's in front of like all of the townsmen, right?
Yeah, I think that's
And the
even.
emperor's advisor is literally
Yeah.
right there. And so he's like, okay, I love my girl who blooms in late or
Mhm.
whatever, in
Hmm.
adversity. But also um my like I gotta save face right now, and
Yeah.
Yeah.
only way to do that is like kind of make it look like I still have like the power and the honor.
Yeah.
um so I do get a sense of like some performativity, but also it was a choice that he made and it sucked.
But there
Yeah.
there is an aspect, right, of like we're in front of the community, we have to perform these
Mhm.
traditional values, and I think a lot of people, that's actually very real. I think of a lot of parent-child relationships of
Mhm.
like the element of like how your behavior reflects on me, so you have to behave a certain way in public.
Yep.
Uh yeah, so they have an awkward meal where she's like, "Are we just not going to talk about the fact that, you're going to war and you're old?" And he's like, Mulan, it's about time you know your place or you learn your place. Like I know my place, you need to learn yours. And I think of most popular girls in school. I'm telling you that you need to learn your place. So she runs out, she's crying. She throws herself on the door frame, she's crying. She's crying on the great stone dragon. And then she sees the armor. She has an idea.
Mhm.
And the synths
She's like, I need a
start
haircut.
going. I need a haircut.
Yeah, they are. I need a haircut.
And we're getting the iconic, like she lights the incense.
Mhm.
She's praying, she's cutting her hair with the sword.
Ooh.
Uh
Mhm.
With like the lightning strikes outside. It's also like I noticed in this like sequence, it's thunder, lightning, rainstorming really hard. I
yeah.
always tell my students add bad weather to your scenes and it
Mhm.
ups the conflict and the tension. Absolutely. If there wasn't this big rainstorm in this like sequence, would not have been that intense. Also, probably like the writers were like, "Oh, how would she be able to get away with all of this moving like armor and shit
Yeah.
around
Mhm.
unless there was a really loud rainstorm
Yep.
outside?"
Because she calms
Smart
Khan
writers.
down,
Mm-hmm.
the
Mhm.
Han
horse.
doesn't recognize her. My wife is always like, "Oh, she passed so good. The horse
Yeah.
didn't even recognize her."
Yeah.
That's
So
funny.
she takes a conscription notice and leaves her comb by the
Mhm.
bed, which is why she is the patron of people who do things for the plot. Uh
Yes.
and so she rides off in this thunderstorm, right? And then grandma has like a vision where she's like, Mulan. And she's like, Mulan's gone, and they see the comb and it's all like distress. They're all distressed. And that's very different from the traditional story where she takes her leave of them. She kind of has a blessing.
Yeah, yeah, that's
Uh
so true.
but she runs, this is more dramatic, right? Like this is
Mhm.
an
Mhm.
iconic scene. But the ancestors, they're stressed,
Yeah.
Mhm.
because your great great granddaughter is a cross dresser.
Yeah,
Mhm.
I love that it's like obviously like the multitudes of families that have come together through marriage. And so they're like, well, she gets it from your side of the family. Like
Yes,
that
yes,
slaps every time. It's
it
still so funny
does.
because I
It's
imagine that's
so
also
funny.
happening in my family
Oh
ancestors
yeah. Oh,
too.
it's so and that's so real. And like every time I watch this, I'm like, oh yeah, I've got the ancestors that are like, okay, who had the trans gene? First of all, who had the queer gene? Because that
They're all
like,
pointing fingers.
yeah, it wasn't me, it wasn't me. So real.
Uh,
and so they're like, we she needs a guardian to bring her back.
hmm.
And Mushu's like, oh, what about me? It's like, no, you're no longer the guardian. You just ring the gong. You're demoted. The last guy got beheaded. And so
Thanks.
thanks. You need to get the great stone dragon.
Mhm.
So he's like, oh, okay, whatever, but the dragon doesn't wake up.
Mm-mm.
It breaks. And so he is like, oh yeah, no, the great stone dragon's fine. And he runs off with the cricket. They're like, oh, we'll bring her back, And he's just kind of the cricket's there, and he's just whatever, the cricket's
And
here.
he decides to do this not because he cares about Mulan and wants to
Once
get her back, but he's like, oh, if I do this, the ancestors will promote me back to being a real guardian. That's
Mhm.
important because his like motivation is not very wholesome at
Yeah.
first.
Yep.
Yes. Yeah, he's not an animal sidekick in the way a lot of the other ones have been.
Right.
Like he has more like a Sebastian. He has differing goals
Oh
that are made
yes.
Yes.
adjacent.
Yes.
Uh,
He has personality.
Yes.
yes.
Eddie Murphy really put his whole Eddie
Or
Mussian,
we're
and it really is something.
Yeah.
That's true. He absolutely did.
But let's talk about dragons. It's as you know, as the year of the dragon, we talked about a couple dragon movies. Uh, but let's touch on Eastern dragons. They're, in Eastern lore, they're often noble beings of wisdom and power, and they're more amphibious, connected with water. Not always, but they lean towards water, as opposed to Western dragons that tend to lean towards fire. And if you notice,
Mhm.
Mushu has fire abilities
Yes.
because
Yes.
that's how a Western mind would think. Dragons were emblems of the emperor. So Liu Bang, the founder of the Han Dynasty, claimed he was conceived after his mother dreamt of a dragon. And the Yan Emperor and the Yellow Emperor, which were mythical emperors, also have dragon connections. And so sometimes emperors are called, descendants of the dragon, but more famously, the son of heaven, right? He's ruling by the heavenly mandate, the divine mandate. And dragons were bringers of good luck. They were embodiments of Yang, the masculine active principle of yin and yang. And they were one of the animals of the zodiac, right? Because it's the year of the dragon. And there were lots of different classical categorizations of dragons based on like the elements or different colors. So take that, D&D. China did
Mhm.
it first. Another thing China did.
Yep. Yep.
Yeah, also Lyle kept trying to like look up more dragon facts and because he wanted me to come prepared with dragon facts. The only thing he gave me was that certain types of dragons that have a certain number of toes.
Oh.
Uh
Yes.
so I
Yeah,
I
the more
I'm sorry I
toes,
don't remember what you told me, but I did mention it.
Something about the toes.
the
Lyle
dra
gets the credit.
the dragons with more toes were more like imperial, and then the less
Yes.
toes you had, like the less high up in the class system you were.
Yeah.
It's a toe system, a toe
I
class
do
system.
think I feel like I read in preparation for today that one of the criticisms with Mushu, there were a lot of criticisms about of Mushu from the Chinese um community in China, because he was so clearly like a westernized dragon. But
Mm-hmm.
one of those things I guess was that because he's red,
Mm.
that the color like doesn't match what his like purpose and character is. That would have been more like evil coded as opposed to being
Mm.
like a friendly helper dragon.
Interesting.
Yes. But that was like a Buddhist thing that some dragons could
Mhm.
be evil.
Yeah.
So, there's again layers. I think, sometimes we talk about cultures like they're like these monoliths that have
Right.
like a canon lore. And as we've talked about many times, canon is a specifically Catholic concept.
Oh,
And
that's
most
true.
cultures and traditions, they just don't have a canon of like what is and isn't. It's like most of the time, this is what we vibe with. But sometimes, you know, we don't.
Yep.
Uh, but speaking of religion, ancestor veneration, ancestor worship. So, honoring your ancestors and their connection to the divine was a traditional aspect of Chinese religion. And connected with, Confucius taught about filial piety and honoring your family and your ancestors. And so this influenced Taoist and Buddhist worship and spiritual
Mm.
traditions as they all intermingled. So it's still a part of many Chinese practice today. Uh, but just I thought we'd touch on that because I think it's a
Yeah,
thing
no,
that
that is important.
people mention a lot, but
Mhm.
I just wanted to touch on the history there. Yeah. But yeah, the dragon, right? Mushu introduces himself in a fiery blaze, and there's gospel music playing, like
Yeah.
hinting at,
So true.
Eddie
Yeah.
Murphy as a black man.
Yeah.
And he is talking about, I'm here to save you and save your legacy. And the cricket is like
Fanning the
fueling.
flames to make
Yeah.
his
Yeah.
like
He's like, if you're gonna
shadow
stay, you better do
Peter.
this.
Yeah, he says that too. He's like, "You
Yeah.
gonna work?"
Yeah.
Mulan is surprised and he's like, "Oh wait, you're a lizard?" And he's like,
Mhm.
I'm
I
a
don't do that tongue
dragon.
thing.
Yeah, dragon.
And he always calls the horse a cow.
Yes. They have kind of like they
A
have like a
rivalry.
rivalry. Yeah, yeah.
Mhm. Well, one of them has very pure intentions, the other one does not
That's
for a
true. That's
while.
true. Khan does have like resting like bitch face though. Khan is
Yes.
always looking like he's got opinions, which
Mhm.
like fair. Uh,
Yeah.
Yeah. I
but
think
also
he's
yeah.
pissed because we didn't have, remember we did a horse poll years ago, not years ago, it was like a year ago, about the best Disney horse.
Yes.
He wasn't even nominated, and that's why he's
What?
pissed.
I
He
mean,
That's
forgot
did
because
Khan.
I didn't know about this poll or I just didn't pay attention.
wait,
The
did
like
we?
Disney horse
Yeah.
verse is so big and honestly Khan
Yeah.
deserves to be up there.
Yeah.
Yeah. I think we just nominated Philippe, Samson, and Maximus, but
Right.
Khan is on their level and should be in
Khan
there.
and Pegasus got kind of shirked from that, if you ask me.
Yeah. But is Pegasus a Pegasus or a horse?
Sometimes a
For
horse.
Cana Los Dos.
Hmm.
True.
No, for real. Doesn't he like he masquerades as a horse sometimes?
I guess. Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah, he does.
Yeah. Um, so yeah, he is like, if you, Mulan, if you fail, you're gonna cause dishonor on you, dishonor your cow, dishonor your whole family. And so they team up. He's like, I'm gonna help you do this because then we'll bring back even more glory. That's what he's
Hmm.
Yes.
thinking. So he's teaching her how to walk like a man, how to talk like a man, spit like a man.
Oh.
And she's like, she's walking into camp. She's like, it smells terrible. Like they're disgusting.
Uh-huh.
And the example of this in real life is as a former RA, whenever there's drama with female roommates, I'm always like, it's always the boyfriend. Because it's always a boyfriend who tries to move in. And I'm like,
Uh,
that does not happen on boys' floors. Girls are not trying to move in there. They do not want to be there.
uh-uh. Smells
That's
so bad.
so real.
Yeah. When I had a mixed gender floor, I had people come, their suite was next to the baseball players, and they were like, it smells so bad.
Oh my
I bet
God.
it smelled
That,
up the hallway. God damn.
yeah. And so I had to like talk to them. I mean, what else can
It's
you
so
Like,
do?
like
yeah.
it's people who've experienced college like know this smell. It's
Of a
so
boys' dorm room. Even if
Mhm.
you've never
Even
been
the
into the
hallway.
room, it's
Yeah,
just,
just the hallway.
yes.
Like you
Yep. You
so it's
know.
very real. It's very
Yeah.
real.
Yeah. I mean, sometimes I open in my gym bag and I'm like,
I think what's
uh,
crazy about this though is she's outdoors.
That's true.
With
yeah.
open
It
air,
is
it's
so
that bad.
strong
It's a
that she's
camp.
like, oh my God.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Oh.
Yeah. So she is like, ooh, and she's putting on a boy voice. And she causes a fight with Yao, Ling, and Chinpo, our three goofy comrades.
Yeah.
And yeah, she's unpopular because she's awkward. She doesn't know how to perform masculinity.
And also
Uh,
Mushu's not helping.
he's
Yeah,
Like,
giving her advice
Mushu's
like,
punch
in her
him.
ear, like telling her what to do. And I think it's really funny that, like, if she had just stuck with her instincts, probably would have been fine.
Yep.
But
yeah,
Mushu's like, no, you got to be real masculine. Punch that guy.
slap
Now,
him in the
like,
butt.
slap his ass,
Because they
right?
like that.
Boys love that. And it's like, Mushu, what have you been up to?
And
Like,
then she turns around, starts walking away, and they're like, yeah, whatever. Like they say like something about her. He goes,
you
why don't you come
limp
say that to my
noodle.
face? Gets her
Yeah.
into it. It's like, Mushu, that's why you
Mhm.
got demoted.
Yes.
Yeah,
Messy.
Starting fights.
Messy.
And then that
But
guy
it
lost
Mushu
his head.
Mushont.
it does give her the opportunity to meet Captain Li Shang, who steps in. I'm sorry, I'm hijacking this,
It's fine.
Cullen.
No, keep going, keep going.
Because then we get a beautiful moment, a hilarious moment of him asking for her name. She
Yeah,
Yes.
sees
let's
that
talk about
through,
it.
and she's got it's the conscription,
Yeah.
Hmm.
the draft call that
Yeah.
has Papa's name, Faju, and didn't know Faju had a son. He doesn't talk about me much.
I can
Oh my
Um,
God.
see
And they're like,
and
why.
she
he's a
has to,
lunatic.
yeah, she has to come up with a name, and she didn't think that through. And Mushu's in her ear, like telling her, Ling. No, that guy's name is Ling.
I didn't
He
ask for that
asks,
guy's name.
yes, and then
Let's
like,
reenact it.
yes, yes, thank you. And then like the really like the Achu moment,
Yeah.
and she's
Yeah.
like really struggling, which I don't blame her. Like on the spot, like first of all, that's stressful.
Yeah.
Hmm.
Um, but also, ooh,
She's not an
suddenly,
improv queen.
yeah, yeah, yeah,
No.
definitely not. But like suddenly got to come up with your preferred male name on the spot, and she picks Fa Ping,
But
which
Mushu says Ping is was his best friend
was
growing
his
up.
best friend growing up, yes. And that's what she goes with. And um Captain Li Sheng is like, Ping, are you sure? Are you sure that's what you're gonna
Are
land
you
with?
sure your name is
Are
Fa
you
Ping?
sure your name is Flower Vase Twink? Because that's basically what this is meaning.
Yeah,
Uh,
Yeah.
like
and she's
effeminate
like,
man.
yup, that
Uh-huh.
what I'm going with. And he's like, yup, Ping. That
Oh.
sure is your name.
That was the name of the commander
Yes.
in that play. It probably meant something slightly different at that
Oh,
time.
that's interesting. Yeah,
Yeah.
Fa Ping is together is flower vase.
And it's like
And it's kind of derogatory for like
yeah.
a like flowery twink. It's
Yeah.
it means
Yeah.
Effeminate
twink.
man.
It
Yeah.
means Ping is a twink. Which
Yeah.
Yeah.
fair.
That's what
I can see
Shang's
it.
into. So
Yeah, yeah. Like twink pride. Like, good
Hmm.
for Ping.
because Shang he's a Nepo baby.
Yeah, he is.
He
Yeah.
became general because his dad was general, so now he's the
Captain. He's
captain.
captain.
So
Captain.
he has to
That
train
is yes.
everybody.
Hmm. He
Uh
is a pretty good teacher, though, I will
I was
say.
gonna say
he
he
gets them in
basically
shape.
Good.
and
Yeah.
he has qualifications. He hasn't seen battle, but the whole thing wasn't like, oh, you're going to lead battle. It's like you need to get these guys trained, and he excelled in training. So
Yeah.
Pretty good.
he's
Yeah, yeah.
qualified, yeah.
But fair, Nepo
But Nepo
baby,
baby.
absolutely, absolutely. And the dad is really hamming it.
Shameless about it too.
Yeah, he
I
is
Yeah,
like
he's
mean,
an impressive military lineage.
again, to be fair, this is they're living under a monarchy, the Nepo baby government system. So
Mhm.
yeah, but he is training, and we get another iconic song.
Yes,
I'll
we
make a
do.
man out of you.
The other transgender song from this film, which
Yeah,
is
when you're transitioning,
Yogi.
you're like, am I as swift as a coursing river? Will the force
Exactly.
of a great
Your doctor's
Yeah.
like,
typhoon?
I'm gonna make a man out of you.
Yes, yes.
Strength of a
And these
raging
are the three
fire.
criteria. Yeah, yeah, yeah.
Yeah. And
Exactly.
then mysterious as the dark
Dark
side of
side
the
of
moon.
Mhm.
Yeah.
yeah. Those are three things I would use to definitely describe you, Nick.
Oh, thank you.
Yeah.
I try. Like it's been almost 10 years of
Yeah.
living those three embodiments of masculinity.
Yeah. You're like, am
Nice.
I mysterious today?
Mhm.
You
Mhm.
know? Uh,
Exactly.
and so this is our training montage song, right? Like, and everyone's bad at all the stuff that they're trying to do. They're trying to break bricks, they're trying to dodge fireworks, they're trying to jump on top of the water on these like
Catch
poles,
fish
lift
with your
things.
hands.
They're
They're
trying to get that arrow at the top of the pole.
top of the
Oh, the
pole.
pole. Oh my God, which is
With discipline and strength, you need them
oh,
both. There you
but
go.
he's gonna do it with his shirt on.
Yeah.
Yeah, which he just says because
I
he's jealous of
we
Shang's
gotta
physique.
so this is we gotta remember that this is the Pride episode, right? I'm like
Yeah.
Yeah.
bringing us the looks. So this is I noticed this is one of the moments where so like Shang takes his top robe off
Yeah.
Mm.
and very well drawn nipples, I will say. I was thinking about this era of Disney. Hercules also had
Mhm.
like this era, they started drawing nipples. Like,
Yeah.
excellent.
Mm.
Free the nipple. So he frees the nipple
Yes.
Mhm.
and all the other guys are like, okay, and Mulan Ping is like staring.
She's like, oh, she
Yeah.
like leans into the
She
frame
literally, yeah, like leans across some other guy's chest and is like, what? Um,
just for that back.
just for that. Yeah, yeah.
Yeah,
Hmm.
he's
So we
bringing
get our
sexy back.
first, yeah, he is. We get our first, maybe our first little instance of like some romantic, or at
Yeah.
least some like sexuality here. Like
Yeah.
some like she's like interested, right?
Hmm.
Which is important here.
Hmm.
And throughout the
But he's in
song,
the moment. He's in the montage. Yeah.
Yeah.
yeah, and Ping is struggling more than anybody. And it also because their teammates, their comrades are sabotaging her because she's
Yes.
unpopular.
Yes.
Hmm.
Again,
Because of
pride
Mushu.
because of
Because of
Mushu.
Mushu plot
Yeah.
device.
Uh, so she is struggling, and then uh, Shang is like, you know what? We're gonna like you're not suited for it. Like go home. And she's like, gonna go home, and she's like, I can't. And
Can't do it.
she sees the arrow and she spends all night climbing up and she gets that arrow. And
So
everyone now is like, that's badass. Like
yeah.
mad respect,
Ping,
bro.
Ping is cool.
Ping is
Yeah.
cool.
And it turns the whole morale of the team around.
Yeah, it does.
Yeah. Because now they're all helping each other. They're all excelling.
Hmm.
And she can even kick Shang, knock him
Mhm.
down. And he's like, oh damn.
Yes, that
Yep.
moment is where that is the moment.
Yep.
Critics, there were like 1998 critics who saw that moment where she kicks him in the face with that swoop and he catches and he like
And he's like,
he gives the smolder at her like him like be thinking this is Ping,
Ping.
Fa
Yeah.
Ping, twink
Yeah.
extraordinaire and he's like "Hmm."
Mm.
And that moment is extremely gay. Just saying.
Yep.
Happy Pride.
Happy Pride.
Happy Pride from one of my favorite songs featuring a red dragon.
Yeah.
Uh, yeah. So they're all a unified front. They're all ready to defeat the Huns. They got down to business.
Yeah, they did.
So if you
Yep.
say "let's get down to business," like that phrase is now owned by this song. I don't
It
think people
is.
use
Yep.
it anymore
Your
because
only response is to defeat the Huns.
yeah.
Exactly.
Uh, so they're doing well. Meanwhile, Shan Yu is war prepping. He finds some messengers, sends them to the Emperor, kills one. A lot of murder. He's
Yeah.
high body count for a
So
Disney
much.
villain.
This is the most death of any Disney film.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's like him and the
Mhm.
guy from Hunchback be doing
Yeah.
actual murders.
Ooh, ooh,
Hmm.
yes.
And like other Disney villains spend their whole movie trying to pull off one murder successfully.
Yeah.
Yeah, exactly.
Uh, and so he's like, all right, his hawk also finds a doll, and they're doing like forensics on like the nearby village and where the army
So
is.
real. Yeah.
Uh,
Horsehair, black powder. Yeah.
Yeah.
yeah, they're
The CSI music plays.
yeah.
You're so real for that. I will never be able to watch it the same way.
I mean, they got a nat 20 on that
Hmm.
investigation check. And so they're like, oh, he's like, we gotta return this little girl her doll, and you're like,
That's
he,
Oh,
you're like, nope.
because
He's not doing
where
that
are
because he's a good dude.
yeah, where are those guys going? Right? They're going
mhm.
to the emperor. They're going to
Yeah,
Mhm.
the palace.
Yeah.
That like took me a while where I was like, what are they? They're just kind of like raiding and pillaging towns. No, they have a goal. They gotta,
Yeah.
mhm.
And
right?
that,
Send
like,
that message.
before he's only killing adults, that is our signal that he is going to kill a child.
It's gonna kill
Yeah,
them all. Yeah.
Yeah.
yeah. Um,
Yes.
so we get the bathing scene, where Moana is ready for a bath. She's like, it's night, no one else is gonna come, but they all Ping, the most popular guy in school, So they're all gonna
Everyone's like, I
run.
want to take a bath with Ping. Obviously.
Yeah.
I want to see what this flower vase is packing.
So they're all running into the water, and they're playing King of the Hill. I said dicks are invisibly waved, asses are invisibly bitten. Happy Pride Month. Uh,
But
because
there's nipple.
there
Okay.
is there's nipple, and she's just trying to be like, I don't want to play that. I don't want this attention. Like I'm
Well,
good
yeah,
at
because the shot we have is Yao's legs,
Yeah,
yeah.
it's
and it's
such
like
a shot.
The
it's
camera is
going
beneath the ball
down.
sack. Yeah.
It's a it's a subversion of the Graduate, right?
Oh,
The in
yes.
between the legs.
Hmm.
Film
That's some
professor.
filmmaking shit right
Yeah.
there.
Yes.
Professor. Yeah. And so Mushu bites Ling's ass so
Hmm.
she can sneak off, and he's pretending to be a
Snake.
snake. Yeah. Then all the other guys come running in right after she's like, I do not want to see a naked man again.
Ever
Such a
again.
good joke. Like it's so good.
And just her eyes are just like, the fuck?
Hmm.
Yeah.
Um,
And I could see the lesbians really liking that one. I could see
yeah.
them loving that line.
Disney was like, this is for you.
Yeah, yeah.
Uh or as Danny Gonzalez, Happy Pride Month. Shout out to the gays. But the little advisor guy, he's mad because he's being made fun of for his girly scream, which the
Yeah.
actor said that was my real scream. Uh, he was saying that they aren't good enough to see fighting, and that's what he was going to send to the general. And Mushu hears that and he's like, no, 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 she's got to go big or go home if we're going to do this. So he
Because
breaks
I
in.
gotta get my promotion.
Yep.
And so he has the cricket be a little typewriter, and they write a message to the emperor being like, urgent, we need troops. And they show up on top of a panda to hand it to him. Uh, yeah. And that panda was
Kung
Poe.
Fu Panda.
Kung Fu Panda. Uh,
Only one panda in the cartoon verse.
it's one
Yeah.
panda. Yeah.
And he's having like the sixth movie come out. It's crazy.
He's working hard. Okay.
And so they're like, he's like, Shang sees it. He's like, okay, we got to go fight. And, Moana's like, you're a really great general. He's like, or commander, captain. And he's like, oh, thanks. And Mushu's like, you like him. And she's like, we're not unpacking this. But they got to march.
Yep.
And so they're marching through China, and they're talking about, oh, a girl back home, and they're singing A Girl Worth Fighting For.
Yes.
And they're
And,
making snow wives as they
yeah,
Yes,
march.
they are very like
waifu, yeah.
the body diversity in this film.
Yes.
I've been very critical of like more recent Disney like animation, like same face and
Mhm.
kind of lack of body diversity. There's like really decent body diversity and even facial diversity in
Mm-hmm.
the characters in this film. And in that moment with the snow wives
Mhm.
and all
Yeah.
of and there's even like rock wives.
Yeah.
Notice how like the three comrade friends, like their fantasy wife kind of looks like them,
Yes.
but like the girl version.
Yep.
Classic question we talked about on this podcast, the Alvin hypothesis. Would you date someone who looks just like you but is opposite gender?
That is the answer is yes for these three guys.
For
Clearly,
these
Yeah.
three
that's
guys, yeah.
literally for these three guys.
Yeah. They watch Alvin and the Chipmunks, they're like, that's so me.
Hmm.
Uh,
But you know what my wife pointed out with this song is that the only one not singing is
Shang.
Captain Lee Shang,
Yeah.
who at this point probably is identifying as homosexual, does not want a girl worth fighting for.
He's
Uh,
Yeah.
experiencing a sexuality.
he is, yeah. And
Yeah.
so he's not singing during this because he's like, couldn't be me.
Interesting.
Yeah.
And yeah, I mean, even the queer-coded assistant guy is thinking about his
Yeah,
girl,
so
and they're like,
real.
oh no, the only girl that likes him is his
Listen, is his
mother.
mother.
And
Mhm.
it's showing that they're like, oh, we like Ping, get along with Ping, and she's like, what about a girl who speaks her mind? And they're like,
Like,
what?
Eh.
They're
And who's
like,
got a brain, right? Who
yeah.
thinks for herself.
They're like, well, that's
Eh.
not, according to my podcast, it's not a high value woman. But
Andrew Tate, we did not invite you.
no, I'm calling the police. uh, but she,
I'm sorry, just the very extreme like cut in this song with because it's a girl
Yes.
fighting for it, right?
okay, but I want to touch on if
Yeah,
we're
yeah,
going to talk
yeah.
about our genders and our
Please,
sexualities.
please,
There
please.
is the moment with the women in the rice fields, and
Yeah.
the one they're all waving at
Mm-hmm.
is not Ling who thinks she's a lady killer. It's Ping,
Yeah.
and there she's having a sexuality and she's really shy,
Mm-hmm.
and they're all
Yeah,
like
she looks
giggling.
away. Yeah, yeah. No,
Yeah,
I that's such a cute moment.
yeah. It's just wow.
Mm-hmm. It
And
Gender.
also is like this. I'm gonna hijack for a moment because I've never gotten this for myself because I kind of visual I'm like more masculine in my appearance, but the like there's kind of this trans man thing in our culture of sometimes trans men who look a little more feminine
like the
get
androgynous femme
yeah
kind of,
get a
yeah.
lot more like attraction from women that are like, oh, like he's so beautiful, he's so cute, and like when they find out that they're trans, like then that's a whole other thing. But there's this like thing of trans men attracting women when like that when it's not like intentional, right?
Hmm.
Yeah,
So just another little trans moment
a little trans moment.
for our culture.
Yeah. The rabbit hole I could go down because now I'm thinking of that anime Rose of Versailles, and I'm like, I
Yeah,
can't.
yeah.
Yeah, we'll
It's
be here
such
all
a
night.
thing. It's such a thing of like the pretty man.
Yeah. I mean, speaking of Shakespeare, Twelfth Night, that's
Yeah.
Yes, so real,
Yep.
so real.
but yes, the smash cut that happens where they're singing and then suddenly the tone is here. They ran into the plot and the
Yeah.
village is burned, decimated.
And I
Uh
think something else that kind of stands out to me about that, because Lyle and I were talking about it, because I was singing along to it and I forgot about the hard cut. And then I
Mhm.
went, oh shit, this is a war movie. Um, but it's also like they're talking about like, oh, we're fighting for like the girl back home, like who's gonna
yeah.
like be amazed by how cool we are. And then it's like actually what you're fighting for is to protect people, to prevent this from happening. Like that juxtaposition is just super
Yeah.
jarring, you
Yeah.
know?
And I think like the message, a girl worth fighting for, and then Mulan finds the doll that
Yeah.
belonged to the little
Little
girl who's
girl.
missing her doll, right? That's exactly what you're saying. Like the girl worth fighting for is all of the little girls at home and the people at home, the
Yeah.
right, the emperor that's for the people, right? I think it's like really good storytelling, but also very mature. Like this film
Yeah.
is so much more adult than I think any other Disney, maybe any other Disney film, like or okay, animated film of its time,
Yeah.
period. But yeah.
I think the 90s were in general, there was a lot more like threat to life. Like if we think of like Hunchback,
Mm, so real.
Pocahontas is very famous for the glossing over of all the death that should have been, not should have, but was happening historically.
Yes. Yeah.
Um, but like there was much more of a threat of death in a way that I think they don't do as much now because people hyperfixate on, oh, should this be for children? But if you're telling the
So
story of
real.
Mulan, there has to be a war,
Yeah.
so I think it's mature, but it's not like trying to like, it's not going in a really dark way to be
Right,
edgy.
right.
It's just like,
So
well, we're
true.
telling a
So
war story. Like,
Yep.
this is what's going on and this is what's motivating her more than, oh, I love my dad or I want to find who I am. It's also like, oh, I need to defend people, you
And
know.
it does it in a, I don't want to say tasteful way, but it's not gory. Like we talked
Yeah.
about All of Us Strangers last week, where like the big reveal at the end
Yeah.
is like it's a very tasteful shot where like you're not seeing a lot. Your mind
Yeah.
is putting stuff together. It's similar here, is that like even as a kid, you're like you're like, oh gosh, like something is burned down. Like you may not put that together that like oh, a shit ton of people
Yeah.
just died, but like
Well, and
as an adult you do.
even the pan of when Li Shang is looking for his dad, and the pan of all of
The
the
dead
what you
soldiers.
think would it's the dead soldiers, but all we can actually see is just armor,
Armor.
and it's covered in snow and
Yep.
ash, and like I've like paused at that moment so many times because I'm like, is this movie actually that dark? And
Mhm.
there's no bodies, right?
Right.
It's so cleverly drawn to be, oh, we're still getting that G rating.
It's it's like it's letting the audience fill things in instead
Mhm.
of being gratuitous.
And
Yeah.
honestly, like,
Unnecessarily gratuitous as
yeah.
well.
And
Because
no,
you still
and
get the
knowing its
horror.
audience. Yeah, and it's knowing its audience. Like I think little 6-year-old me maybe would have been traumatized
Yeah.
by that, right? Like so, that was a good choice on their
Yeah.
part.
I think seeing for a kid, seeing that doll is scary enough because
Oh
you
yeah.
can
Yes.
connect,
You
oh, I
know.
have
Yeah.
toys, I have dolls, that's a kid like me, and that you can put, oh, like she's
My
dead.
neighbor,
Yeah.
no, maybe not even just that, but like they're gone,
Yeah.
whatever that sort of means to a
Yes.
kid, just like, oh, like that could be my home. Like you
Yes.
get that sense of danger.
Yep.
Yeah.
Yeah. And so she is so that she comforts Shang, who's having kind of a grief, like a mini memorial for his dad, and she just says, I'm sorry,
Mhm.
and he's like, okay, we gotta march, they're going straight, for to the Emperor. Uh and they're off, and Mushu accidentally sets off one of the fireworks. It's
Oh,
always Mushu Mushont. And the fire the Huns start attacking, and it's a battle scene. They're shooting their rockets at them. They're getting shot at with arrows, but they're getting outnumbered by all these Huns. And Mulan, she has a brain
Using
moment.
that brain.
She
yes, she does.
sees that mountain up there, and she's like, "Oh, I know what to do." And they're like, and Chang is telling her, "No, do this, do this." And she sets.
They're Yeah, this is another one of those moments of everybody else around her is using their swords and is going straight into the action fighting. They like want to fight. And she has the cannon. She does not take well, she takes her sword out at one point and then it gets tossed.
Mhm.
Yeah.
But she then just has her cannon
Hmm.
and is forced to just use her brain and this cannon and her dragon, her like handy dandy lighter.
Yeah,
Yeah.
But yeah, she's going against what everybody else is telling her to do, but also everybody else is staying back and
yeah.
she's going ahead. So protagonist moment here of like, okay, she's not like going in fighting, she's going in brave and like she's got some kind of plan.
She's got a strategy. She's
Yeah,
seeing
Yeah.
what they're not seeing because she shoots the rocket. Mushu thinks she's gonna shoot it right at the Huns coming toward her.
mhm,
And he's
Yeah,
like, you
Shang.
missed. So she's like, no, I know what I'm doing. That's gonna be an
mhm,
avalanche.
Yeah, because Shang
yep,
is like hit Shan Yu, and she hits up, and they're like, "Oh, you missed, right?" And then
yeah,
the snow comes pouring down. It
yes.
Yep.
buries the Huns.
The
Uh,
entire army, like thousands, like the
Yep.
shot of them all coming down from the mountain, like ants. It's like
Because
tons and tons of these dudes that she just
she's
decimated. She just murdered them all.
it's giving Prince of Egypt and the Red Sea, but that was the big G, and Mulan just did this herself.
Yeah, she just did this herself
the
with
big G.
the
Yeah,
big G. Yes.
yeah,
I
In
think
this case, it's the big brain and that handy dandy dragon lighter.
my last thing about this scene is that everyone, like Nick said, is very focused on going into the action and fighting. There's so few of them and so many Huns that like she's actually seeing a way to get rid of them. Even if she
Hmm.
doesn't kill them, she could like distract them or block their passage and try to preserve the battalion. And so it's like it 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 kind of comes back to that moment in town where she sees the strategy that that
Yes.
guy
Yeah.
doesn't see. You know, he's
Yes.
so focused.
Yep.
And and also I think that like Li Sheng has also just experienced his dad passing, so he's probably also
Yeah.
like grappling with that. So he's not, he's also probably looking
Kind
for
of tunnel
revenge.
vision. Yeah, he's very.
Yeah.
So yeah, so it's like she's able to see outside of all of that. Um, yeah, excellent.
She
And
gets,
that's her like kind of what's being showcased as her like her really strong masculine trait, right?
yeah.
And like the whether it's masculine or feminine, like that's one of her character strengths is
Hmm.
her intelligence and her ability to think outside of the box, right? And it does come back to that the checkers game. And I definitely read an article that was pointing out how the move that she does in the checkers game is like the guy who's losing um was his pieces were so outnumbered by the winning guy, and
Uh,
she sees the move with like the pawn. I mean
mhm,
it's
Right.
like some checkers chess combination game.
mhm.
um and she sees the move with the pawn that basically ends up winning the game in a like kind of the underdog win, and it's actually a foreshadowing of this
Yes.
moment,
I
which
love that.
I didn't come up with that. I read that. So somebody
Yeah.
on the internet, honestly, it might have been a Tumblr post.
I was just gonna say it sounds very Tumblr.
Yeah,
Right?
it
Yeah.
does.
The people like think big on Tumblr, okay?
The Lord's
But I
work.
was like, oh my God, that is so amazing and like so like well written.
Yeah, great
And
detail.
yeah, and just because we talked about, how like the now a lot of Disney protagonists have like some kind of divine power,
Mhm.
or like just kind of like superhero culture and Disney are in conversation, right? And
Yeah.
how typically like classic Disney characters were just kind of an idiot in a random situation. And Mulan isn't an idiot, but nothing makes her special other than herself,
Yes,
right? Like
yes.
she has help, but it's still like she's just a hero. She's not the
Yeah.
son of a
And
god. She's
the
not,
help that she gets, like,
isn't always that
isn't
helpful.
Is
that helpful. Like,
or
he's
it's trying to
Mushu's
put
even telling her to
yep.
like shoot it right at Shan Yu, and she's like, no,
No.
mountain.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, like
Uh,
her helper is another antagonist in her
Mhm.
journey.
Yeah,
yeah.
yeah, so true.
But so she gets attacked, she gets slashed as it's being avalanched. But she saves Khan, she saves Mushu and the cricket, and she saves Shang.
Hmm.
So she gets them all out. They think they're goners, but she's got them. But she's injured, so they get some medical assistance, and then they're all waiting, and then
Yes, that
gender reveal.
iconic gender reveal with the tent. And I will never forget, like, the reveal is that she's snoozing away under the blanket, and then she sits up and the blanket falls down and she's got her bandage wrapped,
Yeah,
her very unsafe binding
Mhm.
of that wrapping on her boobs, and it's like very clearly boobage, and it's
Yeah.
like, but isn't that the wrapping she had all along? Like, did they really take off? My
Mhm.
thing is like, isn't that how her chest has looked all along? But now suddenly, with her hair down and the chest like that, now everybody can see, oh, that's a woman. That's
Well,
clear.
I also wonder if it's like off-screen stuff of that like if a medic treated her, they took off her armor, so they saw
yeah.
everything.
Ooh, yeah, yeah,
Yeah.
so true, so real, so real.
Obviously, they're not going to show that in the movie, but
Yeah,
that's
yeah,
what
yeah,
I'm
yeah,
thinking is
yeah.
like, and I think what we see is sort of just like our signal as the audience, like, oh, they know,
Yeah.
but that's
Yeah.
sort of like,
And
I imagine
my
that's probably what happens.
my like other little mention of the 2020 live action Mulan here is that her chest binder in that film, this is not a spoiler, but
Mhm.
they make a very like the chest binder is an important player in that film. And so like the fact that we see the binding here is also like important, right? It could have been I don't know, like we saw plenty of like boy boobies and nipples. Like
Mhm.
I'm not
Yeah.
saying 1998 Disney would have done that, but like the fact that we see the chest binding
Mhm.
is also hitting the trans in a
Yep.
way. And even more so in the live action. I'll just put that out there. When you watch it, you'll know.
As as Usher says, yeah.
Yeah.
Uh, so it is done. It is done.
Really good.
You're so down, your sound is out.
It's the craziest reference you have ever made.
A really good reference.
I
That
said I
was
thought I've done that
so
one.
good.
I
I
do
don't
that at
know.
work a lot.
I'd say I don't know if I've heard it on the podcast, but that just slapped.
Yeah, it did.
Wow.
uh,
Because it's like I was like, oh, he's gonna say something about being caught up. My confession? No. Yeah.
As Usher says,
Usher
copy.
only he's the only one that
Yeah,
says it.
that's
yeah,
he
yeah.
owns that word.
He owns it. Just like this movie
So
owns Let's Get Down to Business.
Yeah.
exactly. So gender reveal.
Gender
And
reveal. This is my forest fire of a gender reveal.
mhm,
Where he comes in and he sees it and he's like, so it's true. And she's like, I didn't mean for it to go this far.
mhm.
Which, for what to go this far?
Yeah, she didn't mean for him to see the binder.
He
Like,
didn't, I was thinking, just she's like, I didn't mean for you to catch feels. I
oh,
mean,
Oh,
Cullen, good.
because she meant to
Oh,
finish that war,
ooh,
right.
yeah,
you
you're
know?
so
Interesting.
real. Oh my
So she
God.
was
She
like,
can, yeah, she can sense
Gosh.
that he's caught feels and that he's hurt. I actually this is also not my brain, but I was reading that part of what makes us so queer is that Shang is not explicitly saying that he's mad that she's a woman. He's mad that they just had this conversation when she saved him about
Mhm.
trust
Yeah.
and that she lied to him. Not specifically, he's not specifically mad that she's a
Mhm.
woman, right? He never says anything. It kind of comes back to that discussion at the beginning of like, there's no like putting down that
Yeah.
he does. Chief Fu puts her down quite a lot. Chief
yeah.
Fu
Yes.
is like, kill the
Yeah.
woman
Because
because he
Mhm.
hates women.
he
Um,
Yeah.
drags her out. He's a
yeah,
one of those gays.
treacherous snake.
Snake.
That's what he says. Yeah, yeah,
And
yeah.
she just
Throws
saved
her
the
into
whole
the
army. The
yeah,
snow.
yeah,
Half naked.
yeah.
He's doing
Wounded.
Yeah, he's doing I would like to call that a domestic violence,
Yes,
or just
yes, yes.
a violence, pure
That's
violence.
workplace harassment because this is a
Yeah.
workplace, the
That's a
battlefield.
war crime.
That is.
He's throwing her in the snow and he's like, a woman, she needs to be killed. That's the law. And this is walking such a fine line of like how to make people like not be too progressive so it doesn't feel like the society it's supposed to be, but also like we still need to like these people, some of these people. So he can be the just shitty guy, but then her friends are instantly like, no, which I
Mhm.
didn't remember that where they're not really
Yeah,
betrayed. They're shocked, but they're like, no, don't kill her. That's their
yeah,
instinct.
yeah.
And then Shang is like, well, we know the law. And it's giving like Narnia almost, where the White Witch is like,
Ooh,
you know
yes.
the law. Like, you don't
But
want to,
he bends it because he's hot and he's a nepo baby and
yeah.
he's in charge. So he's like, Okay, but she just saved my life.
Yeah.
I'm mad because you lied to me and I thought I was gay, but now I realize that maybe I'm bi and I'm not ready for that right now. I wasn't
Yeah.
Mm,
ready for the sexuality crisis because I thought you were paying.
yeah.
And I still am into you, but I can't handle that right now. So you can be alive, and I'm gonna say that it's a life for a life. But really
Yeah.
I'm having bi crisis.
And
Yeah.
that's his out in the system where it's like you couldn't say like you could say oh he's breaking the law but he's doing something very honorable of like oh
Mm.
you saved my life, life for life, she's basically gonna die
Well, it's not
anyways.
just one life for one life. It's one life for probably dozens of lives because
Yeah.
she saved a majority of her battalion.
Yeah.
And that's true at this point. They fully believe that all the Huns are dead. They
Yep.
Yeah.
believe that Shan Yu is defeated thanks to her.
She saved China then
She
to
saved
them at
China,
this
and they're
moment.
like, "Oh,
Yeah.
we're gonna go to the emperor and tell him that everything's good, but we're gonna
Yeah.
Yeah.
leave this chick out here to freeze."
Yeah.
Yeah.
And take all the credit. So
Hmm.
that's
Yep.
this is where so it's like it's a fine line because Shang spares her and he's not the one being like she needs to die. There's a an imperial official saying that. So
Yes.
you can still root for it, but I'm also like he doesn't say shut the fuck up, she saved us all, and then he goes to take the credit. I was like Shang, maybe this is why I dragged you in that fanfic. I don't know.
Yeah,
I
yeah.
also think is that like his duty to his country as a soldier
Yeah.
is being put above his
Mm.
duty as like a person, essentially.
Mm-hmm.
That
It's
he's like,
coming
I
back
need
to.
to
I'm
do
sorry.
this. And
It,
like saving her, like not like saving her, just like letting her be and moving forward with the mission is like, that's what I have to do. But I'm not gonna be cruel,
Mm-hmm.
essentially.
yeah, yeah. I wonder if it also comes back to this like performativity of like, oh, he's the captain and his dad and his people are dead. And so he kind of has to like step into that place and ooh, now suddenly everybody's going to be looking at him as if he's his dad and oh, I gotta make sure that I am acting and being the part of because there's this whole thing of like
Yeah.
masks that they wear and like playing the part. So
Yeah.
he is having, oh, I have to play the part. So I'm gonna really quickly figure out a loophole. And so the like taking the credit, it's like, well, what are they gonna say? That like, oh, this woman that we left in the mountains, she actually did it. Right? Like
Right.
I think
Yeah.
logically he's like, okay, I gotta figure this out. But
Well,
once they get to the Imperial Palace, like he's not like waving the
Yeah,
flag
he's
and being
he's
like, we
none
very
of them
got
are.
him, right?
Yeah.
They're all depressed. They're sad.
yeah. So
Yeah. And he's also potentially saving her from
dishonor.
dishonor
And
in front
death,
of the, yes, because
actually.
like they could take her to the Forbidden City and be like, actually it was her, and like who knows what could have happened to
Ooh,
her.
yeah,
So
that's a
Hmm.
like he also could be like, we're not going to kill her here and we're not going to take her with us that where she could potentially be killed, like, or we're not going to dishonor their family
yeah,
also because they have
Hmm.
respect for her
that's so
father
true.
as well. So
And they
there's like
do
a
leave her
lot of
with Khan.
decisions.
Yeah, they leave her with Khan, who technically is her horse. Like that's her horse,
Yeah.
Yeah.
right? And they leave her with like some dumplings,
Mhm.
Yeah.
and a sword. Do they leave her with a sword? Or
It's
Yes.
because it's her dad's sword.
it's her dad's
Yeah.
sword, and he
Yeah.
specifically gives that back, right? Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. It's, I think in
That
a
is
weird way, it is also a
such a
sign of
deep
respect
scene. Yeah.
to her, but also to her family and
Yeah.
her father.
Mhm.
It's very
There's a
multifaceted.
lot of layers. A lot of this is a Shrek onion kind of
I was just,
scene.
it's an onion.
Well, and doesn't this come back to our kind of the cultural, the fairy tale here is
Yeah.
like this honor to your family and also the like the father honor, right? So
Hmm.
these are two characters who have very strong, close bonds with their fathers, and like their fathers are very important war heroes, right? So I think Shang is so aware of that. I think you're right, Hannah, that like he's basically I have a little I feel a little better about the choices that he's making here. Because that is a hard choice.
and
Yeah.
and on top of that, like if going back to like if they brought her to the Forbidden City, then the Hun show up. So like potentially she would be imprisoned or
Yeah.
killed because of this, and then the Hun show up. She doesn't get her chance to even prove
Yeah.
that. So like
Yeah.
they also kind of need to keep her alive.
Mhm.
I mean, not just for the story, but like that, like they
For the
could take
plot.
her and they could be like, "What do you mean this woman did it?" Like they could also just be like, "We found this woman," and still take credit. Like
Yeah.
this woman was an imposter,
Mhm.
sus. And so like I just,
Yeah.
yeah, it's oh, I
It's a
I
never
give
tough
thought
decision.
Shang
about this scene
I give
before.
Shang a pass on this.
Yeah.
And I also respect the bi crisis.
Yeah.
Yeah. Valid, valid, yeah.
So they go to the city. Um,
They're like having a parade, but they
yeah,
are depressed
depressed. They're having,
because that very
yeah,
tough
And
decision about Mulan.
before this, Mulan is having her sad girl moment.
she's looking at her reflection in the helmet.
Yeah, and
Yeah,
she
Like I
spits
see
on it and is like,
nothing.
just needs a little
a little
scuffing up.
shine. Because
Yeah.
he admits that he was doing this to get promoted, and the
Yes.
cricket admits it's not lucky.
Mhm.
And
And
she's
Khan admits that he's
A
just
cow. He's
angry at the
actually a
world.
cow.
Yeah, he's actually
okay. And so Mushu's like, we started this together, we'll finish it. And so she's like, let's go home. But then she sees the Huns
Mhm.
breaking out of the snow, screaming for revenge, ready to go to the Forbidden City. And so she's like, oh shit,
I have
we
to
gotta save the
warn them.
Emperor. Even though they were gonna let her go, she's like,
Mhm.
she's got to do her thing. So at the parade, they approach the emperor there, and she's running up, and she's like, guys, the Huns are here. And they're like, you're crazy, like just go home, like we don't trust you. And she's like, oh, but you trust Ping, you listen to Ping.
It's such a good line.
Yep.
It's such a good
She's
line.
like, what makes Mulan different?
Yes,
Nothing.
and
Nothing. They're the same
she
person.
literally cuts in front of Shang, and he does not have a response to that. He's like,
Mm,
oh, oh,
Yep.
snap.
Yep.
Right?
yeah.
Like he's like, wow, she's so powerful. He can't
He's
help but
stunned.
like, oh my God, okay. Yeah, he
Uh,
has no response.
and so they're all like she says it to her friends, whatever she's telling everyone like the Huns are here, the Emperor's in danger. No one gives a
She's
shit.
telling these random people in the back of
Yes.
like, and I was like, what is this person gonna do?
Hmm.
But no one believes her because she's a
Yep.
woman, which is
Yep.
wild.
Yes.
Not like it's just like so true wild where you're like, oh, this movie's real.
And then Mushu has like probably the worst moment of she's trying to talk to him and he's like, "Oh, sorry, I wasn't listening because you're a woman now." And she's like, "Mushu, be fucking for real right now."
He's so for real right now. The lion or the dragon, I think it's technically we think it's a dragon, but it's a
The
lion
lion.
that's
Yeah.
performing because they did a lion dance for Lunar New
Mhm.
Year at work, and it was really cool. But so that the Huns jump out from underneath, they capture the emperor, they sneak him up into his palace. And so Mulan was right the whole time.
Yeah.
And they want him.
She's not unlike Chicken Little. The sky is
The
falling.
Y'all have
sky.
The
mentioned
the
Chicken
Huns are back.
Little an awful lot in this
Vote
episode.
in your local fantasy awards whether or not you think Chicken Little is the best bit we've had on this show.
Yeah, let us know how you feel about the Chicken Little bit. So the Mulan has a plan, and her friends are like, "We believe you because it happened. We're in on the plan with you." Uh, and she's like, "Boob fruit. That's my plan."
Mm-hmm.
So they
Yeah.
dress and drag, because they're trying to ram in and it's not working. So her
Yeah.
friends dress and drag, and then Shang joins after they've already done the dress up, and
But
they
it's you're breezing past this, Cullen. This is a big moment. This is a really big moment for the transgenders, okay?
okay.
And just all the queers, okay?
Yeah.
Hmm.
Because this is and just for gender, this movie is gender. This
Gender loved
third
this.
act is
Yeah.
gender. And so her idea, because force with a phallic object is not getting into the palace. So what will get boob fruit
Boob fruit
and femininity and ugly concubines,
and
right? So
womanly wiles.
yes, and so her plan is and she also just has like these outfits that fit all of the dudes like with some very unique body shapes and sizes. But
Yeah. That's
regardless,
called cartoon supplies. It's
that's
just
yeah,
things that
Disney
you have.
magic. That's
Yeah.
Disney magic right there. But all the while they go through this little montage of their drag montage
Yeah.
and
It's playing Be a Man.
it's playing Be a Man in the background, and they use their sashes to climb up the pillars just like um
The
the
weights.
pillar.
Yeah.
Yes. And they use all their training that they learned in the
Hmm.
second act, and they show us that they grew and they learned. But it's
Yeah.
also such a gender moment
Hmm.
because these male soldiers are like, oh yeah, you know what? She's smart, and if this is her plan, we're gonna do
We're
it. And
doing it.
Well,
also,
it's
you
because
know
she
what is gender?
knows
And
that
they're like,
the only people who can get in to the emperor are women
They're
at
they
yes,
this
because they're
moment.
so
You have to,
unimportant. Yeah.
yes,
yeah.
like she knows this, and yeah, and they do
They
it. Boob
they
fruit.
they tie the sashes because we should also mention how everyone else just carried the weights. Mulan tied the weights and used that to
Yeah.
propel her up. Again, cleverness. Uh,
Yes.
so they shimmy up, which makes me think of the guy in jeans and cutoffs,
Yeah, but Li
shimmying
Shang
up
is like,
the
I'm not
chair.
putting
So
on the makeup.
Yeah,
no,
Li
yeah,
Shang
Yeah,
is like, I'm not going in drag. I'm
he's
not
like,
ready for
I'm
that
I'm
crap.
potentially bisexual, but I'm not a drag queen.
yeah.
Exactly. Which
Disney
is
That's
was
my
like,
fair.
boundary.
we are
And we're like,
not having
okay,
our male lead
that's
do
your gender
drag.
expression, and we respect that.
Yeah.
Yes, yes, he's not ready for it.
So they climb up, and they're like, "Ooh, ugly concubine." But they distract the Huns long enough.
But the
Yeah.
one guy, after he's like concubines, ugly concubines, and he like waves. It's like, okay,
The
he's
one
into the
guy's
ugly
into it.
concubine.
He's
He's
Yeah.
into it.
into it. The twin brothers, and the one twin is like, no, ugly, ugly concubines. Like, and the other one is like, he's
Mhm.
he's there for
He's
it.
considering.
And
Yeah.
he's more than considering. Even when the fruit
He has a
falls,
full-on boner.
yeah, when the fruit falls from the bosom, he even leans down to pick it up. Like that's normal girl behavior. He's like, oh yeah, like kind of like the ending of some like a hot. He's like, oh well, like she
Bend and
got boobs
snap,
or she got
baby.
fruit doesn't matter to me. So I
Uh,
think this is a win for the queers here.
this is and all
Mhm.
lovers of boob fruit.
Oh yeah.
And then because they whip out the fruit, not the
Mhm.
tatas, and they
Well, can I also
smash their
mention
heads with it.
Yes, they do.
that Chimpo has watermelons.
Mhm.
I mean, as a bigger lady, that makes
Yeah.
sense for
Yeah,
him.
yeah.
Um, and then I think it's Yao has an apple and then a banana,
A
and I was like,
banana.
that's interesting.
And we actually Melinda pointed this out as well. And we went back and his chest is even a little misshapen. So
Love
I think
that.
they actually stuck they did continuity.
Yeah.
Love that.
Mm-hmm.
So they get Muan and Chang are able to sneak in as the other guys are getting boob fruited, and they they fight Shan Yu. It's a pretty brutal. Like Shan Yu gives Chang a brutal headbutt. I went like, ooh! I saw that.
Yeah.
I'm like, that hurts. But Muan saves the Emperor. She zip lines him down. She gets him out of there because they're trying to get the Emperor to bow because all these
Yeah,
people
with
died for
the
a dick
bow.
measuring contest.
Mm-hmm.
Uh,
Yes.
And he's like, "Oh, you defeated me. You took my victory." And Mulan's like, "No, I did."
I
And she
actually did
pulls
And does her hair.
this. That's why I'm
Yeah.
wearing a bun in solidarity with Mulan.
Ooh, yes.
and
Such a
he
moment. Such a moment.
Yeah.
The
I
soldier
wrote
from the mountains.
yeah, he recognizes the note I wrote was I did it, bitch. Like that's kind of her.
Mm-hmm.
What's interesting is that the villain isn't like, oh, I got beat by a woman. He was just like, the
Yes.
soldier from the mountains, the
Yes. Yes.
soldier.
And
Yeah.
this is a win for gender because our villain who
Is
we
an
know
ally.
he's an ally. He kills children,
But
but
you know what?
he
He respects the gender
respects,
expression.
yes, he respects strong female soldiers. Like
I
he's
was
like,
Yeah,
oh
just
yeah, like I was
love
beat
that.
by a chick. Absolutely.
I was just gonna say
Respect,
evil sees
game,
no
respect, game.
game respect game. I was gonna say evil sees no gender, it just sees the
Mhm.
consumption and destruction of life. But that's a different way to
Oh, yes, that's a little
yeah.
Okay.
different. Yeah.
Yeah.
We're
But
saying the
that
same
is
thing.
mhm, mhm.
Game respect game. Yeah.
It is also slightly culturally accurate
Yes,
in
that is
that
also
time.
true. Yeah.
Yes.
And so
And so that was another like culture win slash also something that is mentioned in the 2020 live action.
yes, that movie. So they're fighting. Mushu is prepping. He's doing a worst nightmare because he's trying to get firework access. Because Mulan is thinking on the fly. She's like, okay, what's my plan? She lures him up to the roof. He's knocking down entire pillars with the sword, and she's dodging. She's climbing up. She's scurrying. And he's like, "You're out of ideas," and she's like,
Mm,
"No."
Actually, I'm not.
not quite.
And she uses her fan to grab his sword, twist it around, and get it herself. Which this Mulan as her
I'm just
50,
going to salute her for
yeah,
that.
Mulan
This
as her
is such a
51st
big moment.
movie is not in the Fantasy Choice Awards because it'll be whenever the next 50. But this is an example of a "that's my girl" moment.
Hmm.
Fifth Harmony's "That's My Girl" starts playing because you're like, damn,
That's my girl.
yeah,
It's so I gotta also do this for the gender
yeah,
Do it for the
because
gender.
for
You
Narnia,
had to do
the
it to him.
gender,
the fact that she uses
a
a
fan,
a sign of femininity to basically win, to defeat the masculine phallic sword, and it's
hmm
also visually kind of that way, but
yeah,
she uses it to win. And so the fact that she uses her femininity and then swap and is like, huh, I can also do masculinity as well. And it's the one moment she does use the sword, but what she uses it for is not to slash him and kill him, it's to stab his little cape or whatever.
yeah.
Hmm.
Um,
Keep him in
and
place.
yeah, to keep him in place so that
He needs
Mr.
to learn
Fire,
his place, which is
yeah,
being
he needs
blasted with fireworks while his corpse rains down on the people below, cheering for his death. That's
yeah.
that's where I
I
That's
am
what
right
called a
now.
piece.
Ooh, that's a toenail.
Ew.
Yeah.
But she slides down. She zip lines down
Yes, she
from
does.
from her victory, and they're all so excited. And the emperor comes down. He's like, "Pahlawan, you disobeyed your father. You took his sword and his horse. You impersonated a soldier. You destroyed my palace. Did all. You disobeyed your commanding officer, and you've saved us all." And
Fake out.
Bake out, and he gives her Shan Yu's sword and his pendant of honor,
Yes.
and she hugs him.
Mhm.
Yep.
And then he bows to her. And everyone
Yes.
has to be lower than the emperor, right? So they all bow. And so she's achieving the highest honor that
Mhm.
she can achieve. Um,
So
I just
powerful.
got chills. Just
I
yeah.
know
saying.
it's every time the 480 billion times that I've seen this movie, every time it gives me chills and I cry.
Yep.
It's just everyone, she's fought for this, she earned this, and she is a hero, and it's honor. She achieved everything she set out to and more. She's bringing honor to her family.
Yeah.
She's finding who she is. He offers her a job on the council. And Shifu's like, oh, well, there aren't any open positions. And he's like, oh, well, she can have your
Take
job.
his job. Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, he's like, because you obviously suck.
You
And he
obviously
never
suck.
doesn't say
Yeah.
that, but basically does.
That's what he's thinking. Yeah.
Yeah.
And she's like, I want to go home. I want to be with my family.
So
So,
sticking with the
Yeah.
original source material.
yeah. And
That part is almost exactly like the
like the
original.
story, yeah.
Mm-hmm.
And Shang is like, oh, you fight good. And the Emperor is like, you don't see a woman like that every dynasty.
Mhm.
Yeah.
He
Uh,
also
Because
he
he
like
he
says a
quotes.
little piece of like of knowledge, and Shang is too dense to get it.
Yep. That's
He's
why he
like,
he says the
flower that
the
blooms in
blooms
adversity.
late and
Yeah.
adversity is often the most rare and beautiful. And
mhm.
then Shang's like, huh?
Huh? That
And
that
then he's
cat,
like, you're
huh?
not gonna find a woman like this every dynasty,
And then
bro.
he puts
Don't
his
hit
hat
her.
on, and then he's Emperor out.
Emperor
Yeah.
out.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And Shang is like, okay.
He's
And
like,
then he's starting to be okay with his bisexuality. He, yeah, yeah.
Yeah.
yep.
All he can say is you fight good.
Yeah. Uh, and so she goes home. She shows her father the badges of honor
Ugh,
that I brought you this, and he says the only honor is having you as a daughter. And
so beautiful.
they
Yeah.
hug. She cries. The grandma's like, "Why didn't she bring home a boy?" And then Shang shows up,
Mm-hmm.
and she's like,
Sign
"Oh,
me up for the
Sign
next
me up
war,
for the next
baby.
war.
I was like, I
Yes.
love horny
Yes,
grandmas.
Grandma. Yes.
and he's like, "Can I stay for dinner?"
Can you stay forever?
Yeah.
Yeah. And she's like, "Yeah, let's have dinner." So it's a much more subtle romance than a lot of Disney
Mhm.
films, but there
Yeah.
is a romance, and it ends like many a Disney princess movie with her kissing a comic relief character on the head because Mushu is
Oh,
causing
so
chaos,
true.
and she's like, "Thanks, Mushu," and then it says, "Be true to your heart."
Well, first, uh, Mushu gets called by
Mhm.
the ancestors.
By
He
George
gets
Yeah,
back.
Takei.
He gets back, to his position as one of the leads, right?
yeah,
Uh, but like at the very end, he like calls out for Mushu, and Mulan also looks. So she recognizes the ancestors.
Oh,
yeah.
whoa,
What
that's
is that
crazy.
What a
about?
twist! Be true to your
Whoa.
heart.
Mushu
Who
sees
cares?
ghosts.
Do y'all know the theory that she is the Great Stone Dragon?
Yes,
I have vaguely heard
Mhm.
of this.
I
That
think that's
Yeah.
like
another
she is
Tumblr.
she
Yeah,
is the spirit. Yeah, that's so Tumblr, right?
Yeah.
That actually makes me think of like, oh, okay, if she's like aware of the
Yes.
ancestors, right?
We
hmm
It
couldn't
also
have we couldn't have verified that before because she had already left when
Yeah, it
Mushu was
also makes me
called.
wonder. There was one shot, or cell frame, whatever, where like Mushu was totally right there on her shoulder. This is
yeah.
like second act, and then we kind of see it from one of the other soldiers' perspectives, and Mushu's totally not there. And I'm like,
Uh,
Mushu's definitely real. Mushu's definitely there, but is he only like visible to Mulan?
I think that's
Right.
true. I think
Well,
he scares those people, but I think
Right. But I
almost
wonder if
like,
like it's he like can charge up his spiritual
right.
energy or something
or
to like
he
this is like funky lore going on
Yeah.
here.
he might choose the
But
people who can see him.
yeah, yeah, that's
Yeah.
Yeah.
really interesting.
Maybe you have
Yeah.
to believe in dragons like Avril Lavigne to see
hmm
Mushu.
Yeah.
Yeah. I tried so hard to find that clip of the Today Show or whatever, and I
I
only
did too. I
remember
and I could not
it.
find it. Like I think Avril wiped it from
Yeah.
existence.
She
She
really
doesn't
yeah.
want people to know the truth
No.
Yeah.
that
Uh,
dragons exist.
dragons exist. The dragon lobby was like, Avril, you spoke
Avril,
too
Yeah,
no.
you
Like we
much.
gotta
know that
know.
you are
No.
our biggest fan, but we can't have this.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So characters, of course, Mulan is an icon, and we've talked about this whole time how much you just easily root for her. Our antagonist, I just wrote Shin Yuck. He's a great antagonist, but I don't love murder.
I don't know.
And
Like Sean, ooh, like I don't know. I don't know. He's an ally.
We
I
did
gotta
we
true.
say,
did learn that he is an
yeah, yeah.
ally.
Yeah,
Queers love villains, and I don't know.
yes.
He's sure he kills children and stuff, but like he
I can
doesn't.
forgive that.
Yeah, I'm fine with it. No,
And
I'm not. But
I, yeah, we know a bit when
okay.
we hear it.
Yeah.
Again, all Disney villains are gay, except
Mm-hmm.
for there's like five, like the stepmother in Cinderella and Maleficent, and they're
Mm-hmm.
homophobic. Yeah.
Yeah.
But the music in this movie is iconic. No notes.
Yeah.
Yeah. I feel like the music in this film is often mentioned as like the best like music, right? Like
Yeah.
in some of the best. I mean, I am biased, but I
I mean, I
really
even
feel
fuck
like
with that first song,
so
Bring
iconic.
Honor to
Yeah.
Us All. I sing along to it because I'm like, it's catchy, it's
Yeah.
really pretty. And it's
Mm-hmm.
like, I can't say that about other Disney movies that like I like every single song that's in
Mm-hmm.
it.
Yeah.
And there aren't that many songs. Like there's
Mhm.
only what, four songs.
Yeah.
But they're real bangers.
And
Yep.
they carry a lot of story weight. They're very
Mhm.
effective in
Yes.
that way.
True.
And the vibes of the movie have this beautiful like watercolor aesthetic.
Hmm.
The smoke, very traditional Chinese
Oh, I
depiction.
love the smoke. Yeah.
So just, I think that it's time for a big question.
Mm.
Was that your fantasy, Hannah?
Yes.
In both senses, right?
Yeah, in
Yeah.
both senses. The sense of that, like, yes, well, I don't know. Do I want to go off to war? I don't think so. It is my fantasy in the sense that I love this movie and it's fantastic. And every time I watch it, I find something new to love about it. And I'm so glad we had this conversation. I'm gonna say it's not my fantasy in the sense of I actually don't want to go off to war. This is an adventure I would want to live out. But yeah,
Nick?
Being trans is a war. Keeping it real. No, so I will say that this movie is so real, and I was not prepared for this question, but I'm gonna say yes because it's my favorite film and super relatable. Like, yeah.
Yeah. I would say yes, it's my fantasy. Great movie, just such a quality film. And I love that idea of passing through all these trials and winning societal approval. Like I just love that.
yeah.
Isn't there something interesting about like maybe this is still the case, but our generation, these films were like just kind of a regular nobody suddenly gets like the recognition of like literal crowds of people, like
Yeah.
literal crowds, like whole ass societies, like recognizing you and like clapping for you. It's like the High School Musical thing of
Yeah.
like I'm gonna sing in front of the whole school and everybody's gonna know that I'm like the best and I'm gonna get like recognized. Everybody's gonna clap, everybody's gonna bow, everybody's gonna think I'm the best. Like that like need for validation is
Mhm.
so strong and that's not a negative
Yeah.
like we need validation
Yep.
and like that's part of what makes this so like empowering is like she gets that validation not just from like her dad, which is what is
Mhm.
most important to her, but like societally the people who can relate to Mulan. Doesn't have to be trans queer folks. It can
Yeah.
be anyone who has felt any of those feelings, right? Like that
Yeah.
that cultural societal validation that like you can be yourself is like super powerful.
Yeah. I
So that part of the fantasy, fuck yes.
yeah.
I would like all of
Yeah, I would love that.
right. I would like everybody to just like bow down and be like, "Oh, he is the best," right? Like,
There's
I
a
don't know.
there's
Is
a
that just
Rate my
me? But
professor.
right. uh
yeah.
there's a I saw this essay years ago and I couldn't find it about Disney and happy endings and how like crowd adoration, access to wealth, romance, all these kind of
Ooh,
things.
yeah.
And then, but I think a simpler thing that I saw on TikTok was that a Disney princess has to leave the haters weeping.
Mhm.
And that's, you see that from movie one up through this, where it's like people doubted her, but you can't doubt her now. Hannah's literally her. Uh, and we could talk about this movie
Mhm.
forever. But Nick, is there anything you'd like to plug?
I try to keep my like professional stuff away from my social media because I'm embarrassing on social media.
You're
But
mysterious as the dark side of the
I
moon.
am, but
That's,
I'm
Oh
yeah,
my
starting to
gosh,
let it.
literally.
I'm learning from fopping and following along that like, okay, maybe it's okay to be a little weird.
yeah,
Trying to be myself. I will say that like just a plug for trans and gender non-conforming people to be themselves if you feel safe in that environment to do so. I will say I've started being like super open and out to my classes, to my students, and like the response to that is just so like I get a lot more students coming up to me and being like, "Oh my God, like will you be my advisor? Oh my God, like I really relate to you." I have had so many students like come out to me as trans,
amazing.
and I think it's because I am more myself. And so just a plug and like a shout out to all my lovely trans folks out there. Happy Pride.
Happy Pride.
Yeah,
Uh,
I love that.
yeah, that's amazing. Hannah, where can you find Not My Fantasy?
You can find Not My Fantasy on Instagram and TikTok. We are at Not My Fantasy Pod. And you can also find us on YouTube. If you're watching Hi Hello, you can
Smash that like button.
smash the like button, hit the notification button or bell, and also leave us a comment.
Yes.
Uh,
Like
Uh,
and subscribe. I've always
li-
wanted to say
yeah, like and subscribe
that.
and comment below with which one you identify with more. Mysterious as the dark side of the moon, strength of a raging fire, fourth of a great typhoon, swift as a coursing river.
Ooh.
yeah,
Uh, so
that's great.
comment below, let us know. Are you river? Are you fire? Are you dark side of the moon? Are you a typhoon? Yeah, and then next week we are continuing Pride Month by talking about an iconic queer fantasy film, Nimona.
Hmm.
Yeah.
Nice.
So
Yeah, and
can't
I haven't seen it yet.
yeah,
Spoilers for next episode, but I haven't seen it yet. So
great movie. Nick, thank you so much for coming on. So happy to have a true Mulan head with us for this.
Yes. Yes. Thank
Uh
you for having me.
of course.
yeah, and Fantasy, please vote in your choice awards. Check out the Fantasy Choice Awards, and we'll see you next week.
Yeah. Bye, listeners.
Bye.